Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Nika Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Cloud Mutation Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku sighed as yet another alpha called out to the smaller Omega of their group. Denki, while not the only Omega, was the only one that their trio had to worry about. Even though they were definitely underage, it didn't stop not-head alphas from catcalling them, and it had begun to get annoying. Back off, a-hole. Izuku hissed, shielding the small blonde. The alpha snarled, don't tell me what to do. Izuku spat at the man, if you didn't want to be told what to do, then maybe you shouldn't act like a pages. He put himself between the two, none of us are interested in anything you might be able to offer, and even if we were, you aren't anything special anyways. He sneered before turning his back on the still fuming alpha. They walked a bit before hearing steps coming up behind them and quickened their pace. Izuku directed his small pack into another alley, attempting to lose the a-hole alpha following them. The man had been hitting on Denki for most of the trek, growing angry when Denki refused them and then ignored them. Izuku growled out his frustration as he realized he had led his family into a dead end. He swore, facing the entrance. Toshi, Plan PD3. He waited until his twin had stepped between his mate and brother before relaxing slightly. At least neither of the other boys would get hurt if he ended up going feral. He had nearly lost his brother by going feral the first time. He couldn't remember his own name, the bloodlust and power flowing through his brain as his claws ripped into the flesh on the ground. He sensed someone coming up behind him and whirled on them, swiping at whoever dared to come between him and his prey. He barely registered the purple before clouds invaded his senses, cutting off all ability to move. When he came back, the bloodlust and fury had drained, letting him see his twin and best friend on the ground in front of him, deep gashes etched in his cheek. Izuku gasped, Toshi, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. He stammered, his teeth chattering with fear. His brother stood, Izu, don't worry. I know you didn't. I'm okay, I promise. It's just a scratch and it'll heal. Unlike that guy. He points back behind Izuku. He turned, seeing for the first time the absolute mess he had created. The man, or what was left of him anyways, had countless claw marks and bruises, lining and overlapping each other up and down the body. Izuku stared, but as much as he wished for it, there was no movement that told of life. What happened? Izuku stuttered, not able to take his eyes away from the carnage. Hitoshi sighed, his arms wrapping around Izuku's waist. He tried to attack us. He and a few buddies thought they could take us and sell us to pervs, and you went feral as soon as he touched you. His friends ran off sometime after that, and it was left to me to get you out of that state. Izuku burst into tears, I didn't mean to kill him. Hitoshi sighed deeply, I know Izu. But we have to get out of here before the cops come. He gripped Izuku's wrist tightly, dragging him away. Izuku came out of the memory as the man burst into the alley. There you are. You have nowhere to run. He sauntered up to the trio, pheromones seeping out of the alpha, his attempt at drugging the omegas of the group failing miserably. Denki was premated to Hitoshi, only their ages stopping them from completing the process, and Izuku was an Omega Prime. Alpha commands and pheromones didn't work on him. Ever. What do you want, old man? Izuku sneered, clouds already seeping out of his mouth. The man scoffed, stepping closer. I want that pretty little Omega you're hiding. Izuku had to stop himself from grinning as the man stepped into the last bit of cloud, waving it away. Your little smoke trick doesn't scare me. I'm going to take that Omega and you can't stop me. Izuku snarled, I'd like to see you try, you ugly but buffoon. The man stopped short, fury flooding his features. You're gonna regret that, you runt. He threw his hands out, expecting something to happen. Confused, he glanced at his hands before doing it again. What the f dash? Why won't my quirk work? Izuku laughed, all temper and calm. I stopped it. You thought it was a smoke trick, but it wasn't. You stepped into my clouds, which have the ability to stop your quirk. He watched, waiting, as the man froze. He could feel his heart thundering, beating harshly against his chest in its attempt to escape. The man lunged suddenly, his arms outstretched not for Izuku but for Denki himself. If I can't have him, and no one can. The alpha screeched. Izuku jumped, intercepting the man before throwing him back and into a wall. Izuku hissed as the other's head cracked against the bricks. No one touches my pack. Izuku's voice was gravel and deep. He could feel himself slipping further into feral mode. With the last of his strength, Izuku ground out. Toshi. F1. He stepped forward, grabbing the man's arms in his grip, twisting them quickly until he heard them break. The man screamed, but Izuku didn't stop. Continuing on, he manifested his claws, cutting the offender into ribbons until the man was weak with blood loss before gripping the sides of his head. "This is for threatening what's mine," he growled as he twisted sharply, snapping the man's neck. He turned back to his brother and packmate, but before he could speak, a sweet smell came wafting into the alley. Izuku fell to the ground, his pack following with their own falls. All Izuku could see as the world faded to black was a single pair of boots coming towards him. Shota, Hizashi and Oboro were perfect for each other. There was no shock to anyone that the three boys would end up together. Even random people on the street could tell that Hizashi and Oboro were hopeless for Shota. And he for them. The three of them had met at UA High, a finishing school for the elite and famous. If you had money, you sent your kids there. If you were famous or even part of the government, you sent your kids there. As an alpha that came from a tech mogul's family, Hizashi Yamada was expected to act a certain way, and when he refused, well, his father had no time for a boy with too much energy and not enough control. He had an empire to run. And so Hizashi was sent to UA, and honestly, he couldn't have been happier. At least he didn't have to worry about people only being nice to him because they were paid to do so. At least he had real friends and not people trying to buy his attention or friendship. At least he had his mates. As the son of a government icon, Oboro Shirakumo never really knew his father. His mother was just someone the man had laid with, and sending him to UA High was just his way of checking Oboro off his list. Get the BSTRD son a proper education and maybe he wouldn't make a fool of himself and his father. His mother didn't care about Oboro either, choosing to waste his father's money instead of pay attention to her son. At least he found love with his mates. Shota Aizawa came from a powerful family. One that butted head with a lot of other people in their small community. His family owned half the city. Rumor going around was his family was Mafia, and yet, the teachers still tried to quell the whispers. Shota had already been in several altercations by the end of the first term at UA High, not head alphas thinking that Shota was a weak Omega with no fight in him. But they were wrong. He wasn't weak. His Mafia-running father had taught his only child everything he knew about protecting the family and instilling a sense of pride in the dark-haired Omega anytime he caught wind of those pesky rumors. At least he knew he could trust his mates. It didn't take long after graduation for both Oboro and Hizashi to complete the mating process with Shota, the three of them hiding away in one of the Aizawa family's safe houses as they finished their bond. Oboro had cut ties with his parents, and Hizashi had inherited his father's tech empire after the man died from a hit and run. There had been whispers that Hizashi had arranged that accident, but nothing was ever proven. They all settled into their roles. Hizashi kept his father's empire alive, but his portion of the profits went to the family instead of himself like his father had done. All of his father's assets, like the various condos and cars, got sold, and the money in turn was used to buy things for the family to build upon. Oboro used some of his hacking talents to ruin his father's life. With a little bit of time, his father's marriage, career and world came crashing down around him. Oboro found out a few months later that the man had died, having drank himself into alcohol poisoning. The man's wife found Oboro then and gave him the rest of the money that his father had set aside in his aspirations to keep Oboro's mother silent about the affair. Oboro invested the money, allowing it to grow for the future. And Shota got the territory. His father retired 3 years after graduation, happy that his only child wanted the family business and had 2 protective mates to keep him safe. The elder Aizawa took his own mate on a long cruise, calling every weekend to check in with his son and sons-in-law until he died heart failure. Shota's mother didn't last much longer, following her mate into death a single week later. Many other families from around the country came in for the joint funeral to pay their respects and to renew alliances or treaties with the new head of the family. This took another few months to settle, and during that time a few alliances were made, and many were broken. Of those broken, it was always because the alphas and leaders of those families were unwilling to work with an Omega boss, to which Shota took great offense and proved why they were wrong. Things changed around the territory. First was the name of the Mafia family. No longer were they the Aizawa family. Instead, they became known as the Shirayamazawa family. Something that also changed was the type of business they dealt in. Drags and weapons dealing was just fine with the 3 young bosses, but no longer did they deal with anyone who had a hand in trafficking children or Omegas, which caused even more breaks in alliances. Before, as long as it wasn't done in front of the family or on their territory, Shota's father didn't care, but Shota did, and he wanted a stop put to it. It wasn't honorable anyways. And while the 3 young bosses couldn't stop anything from happening in non-allied territories, they were quick to make sure that none of their allies had their hands in those pockets. There had been many assassination attempts on the trio's lives during that time, some closer to succeeding than others. Shota now sported a scar under his right eye, a moon-shaped mark where an attacker had smashed his face into concrete and had broken his orbital floor. Oboro had nearly died once, having had a building land on his body after shoving some children out of the way. He had been in the hospital for almost a year before he was allowed to leave. Hizashi had someone attempt to sever his vocal cords and he now had a thin white line etched across his neck. But the three of them continued to survive. And then, 6 years after taking over the family, an announcement was made. The bosses of the Shirayamazawa family were expecting. Namuri Homingu wasn't expecting her night to be so full of excitement. She only was supposed to be out to visit a few businesses and make sure everything was running smoothly. Her mate and husband, Shosher, stayed at home with their daughter, tucked in and probably watching a movie, and she couldn't be happier. Some of the businesses in the territory liked to see the CC Omega, but they all knew she was off limits. Shosher, better known as Snipe, was an excellent marksman. His quirk, homing, was something of a legend and everyone knew that he never missed a shot. She strode out of a bakery, her grin teasing and wide, and was about to enter her car when she heard a kid shout from across the street. Looking up, Namuri quickly realized that some alpha had tried to touch a minor Omega and one of his packmates had taken offense. Even from across the road, Namuri could tell that the 3 children were minors and everyone knew, "You don't try to touch minors around here." Waving off her driver, she eyed the trio, watching as they came closer to her before going into an alley, the alpha from before following them inside. Namuri was quick to join them, leaning against the corner as she heard the greenie call out, "What do you want, old man?" She tilted her head as cloud seeped out of his mouth. She watched silently as the alpha answered, stepping into the clouds. She already knew, even without knowing this kid, that he had planned for that. Something about the kid tickled her brain before it clicked. His mannerisms and protective instincts were just like Shota when he was younger. "I'd like to see you try, you ugly but buffoon." DMN the green bean was funny. She could see the alpha growing angry and watched as he threw his hands out, expecting something to happen. After a few tries he asks, "What the F dash? Why won't my quirk work?" Namuri wasn't expecting the kid's answer. "I stopped it. You thought it was a smoke trick, but it wasn't. You stepped into my clouds which have the ability to stop your quirk." Namuri's jaw dropped. What the F dash? This kid has an erasure quirk? And one that hides in clouds that come from his mouth? She nearly jumped into the alley as the man screeched and attempted to attack the blonde Omega child. The green one was quick, throwing the man against the brick wall before grinding out to his purple packmate. "Toshi. F1 inch." She didn't know what it meant, but she knew something was about to happen, so she waited, not at all surprised when the kid fell into a feral state. Her eyes widened as the green kid sliced up the alpha, draining him dry before growling, "This is for threatening what's mine." Then he twisted, breaking the alpha's neck. She stepped forward then, quietly sending out her own sleeping gas of a quirk before coming closer as they all crashed. The green one fought her quirk, but eventually he succumbed too. She stopped at their crumpled bodies. "Shota's gonna kill me." She called her ride, watching the small pack for any sign of waking as she waited. Once the car had arrived, she picked up the purple one, alpha with a partial mate bond. She could smell the still milky scent of pup on him, but also the started bond. He was placed in the car, and she returned for the yellow one, not at all shocked when the small Omega had the rest of the partial mate bond. Her driver got out of the car. "Mrs. Midnight, Messrs. Shirayamazawa has been informed of the 3 pups. They ask that you meet them in their office once the pups are settled." Namuri huffed, "Thanks. Keep watch on those 2 while I get the 3rd. She picked up the green one and looked closer. He was smaller than the other 2 and it surprised her that he was also an Omega. "You are just full of surprises, aren't you?" The pup, who Namuri realized wasn't simply green-haired but had black as well, nuzzled into her neck. He smelled like the purple one, a simple littermate scent. She was even more sure of her actions then, there were just too many things adding up. She was quiet, carefully watching the 3 pups for any sign of waking as they rode to the compound. It took a bit of juggling, but between Namuri and the driver, they managed to get the pups into one of the guest rooms together, knowing they would become panicked if they woke up in a strange place alone. After leaving a small note on the bedside table detailing that someone would be in to check on them and explain a few things, she left, locking the door behind her. Izuku stretched, his eyes fluttering open and closed before the memories came flooding in. Snapping awake, Izuku jumped out of the lush bed he was sharing with Hitoshi and Denki. He couldn't remember anything past the sweet smell that put him to sleep, and that scared him. Where were they? Who took them from the alley? Was it the same person who he saw as he fell asleep? He growled as he looked around. The room was clean, posh even, the ornate decorations on nearly every surface that he could see. A quick perusal told him that the room had an adjoining bathroom, complete with a separate shower and soaking tub. Coming back into the room, he saw a small piece of paper on the nightstand and growled again as he read the note. Someone took him and his pack and thought they would stay there to wait for someone to come speak to them? No, he's not letting his family get harmed just because they were placed in a gilded cage. He moved to the other side of the bed, shaking his brother. Toshi, wake up, he urged. He panicked when the purple-haired alpha didn't even move, but calmed slightly when he made out the telltale signs that his brother was simply sleeping deeply. He tucked the boy back in before wandering around to look for anything he could use to protect his pack. He wasn't going to lose them to the unknown. On one hand, he was impressed with the lack of weapon possibilities, but at the same time, it irked him. How was he supposed to protect his pack if he didn't know what was going on and didn't have a weapon? He had his claws and his ability to go partially feral, but there was always a danger in that. He didn't want to hurt his pack by accident. Izuku, not knowing what else to do, faced the door, silent and waiting for the unknown. A quick text to her mate that she was back and about to meet with the bosses took up most of the walk to the giant office. She could remember when she met the three mates at UA, their already close-knit group barely allowing the older female to join with friendship. It took almost a month before she managed to get Shota to smile, but it was worth it and she hasn't had any reason to regret it. Taking a deep breath, she opened the office door. The three bosses were already sitting on one of the couches waiting for her. She sat down in the chair across from them. Good evening, Nem. We heard you found something and decided to act. Oboro spoke. Namiri nodded, yeah. I was coming out of the bakery on Kyoto Street when I heard what sounded like a child yelling at someone. The alpha wasn't one of ours and from what I could tell, he had tried to proposition one of the three children who is an Omega. The one yelling took offense to that and told him to go away before herding his small band of children away. When the alpha followed them, the kid directed his friends into an alley. Namiri stopped. Guys, I saw something, I don't know if I was right, but the smallest kid, the one who was leading the others, his quirk was different. Hizashi tilted his head. What do you mean, Nem? She bit her lip. The kid, while small, was powerful. He emitted a smoke-like cloud from his mouth and when the alpha stepped into it, smirked. The kid told the alpha that his quirked cloud was able to stop people's quirks. She watched as the three tensed. If that wasn't enough to interest me, the kid had green hair and one of the other pups had purple hair while the third had blonde hair. I didn't think anything of it at first. The purple and green are somewhat uncommon but not impossible. But when I knocked them out, the green one had streaks of black as well and he and the purple one shared a litter scent while the purple and blonde ones shared a partial mate scent. Shota gripped his mate's hands. You think they are our missing pups? Namiri shrugged. There were too many things adding up. I even heard the green one call his brother, Toshi. Besides, how many green and purple-haired brothers are there in the world where one of them has an erasure quirk? Not to mention, even if they aren't your pups, I couldn't leave the three of them out on the streets. The green one had gone semi-feral to protect his pack and it ended with the very impressive death of the alpha. He killed someone? Shota was shocked. Namiri nodded. Yeah. The alpha jumped at the blonde saying that if he couldn't have the kid then no one could, so the green one went feral and cut up the alpha with his claws to the point of severe blood loss before breaking his neck. I stepped in then and gassed them. I was worried about the feral state and knew they would probably not come peacefully. She paused. I didn't want to take the chance of losing them to the wild of the streets. The three exchanged glances. You did good, Namiri. Even if they aren't our missing pups, you got powerful and scared children off the streets. We will send someone to the alley to pick up the alpha's body and clean up the mess. We need to find out if he was alone or if he was working with someone. Everyone should know by now not to harm pups or omegas within our territory. Hizashi growled. Namiri nodded. Another thing, they still had their milk scents, all three of them. They can't have hit PBRTY yet, probably why the mate bond was only partial. Shota nodded. Anything else before we go and meet these children? Namiri bit her lip, not sure that it is important, but the green one is an Omega Prime. He fought my quirk and the alpha's orders with ease. Oboro's eyes widened. DMN, kid's definitely powerful. An Omega Prime pup running the streets is news that any of our enemies would kill to get their hands on. Namiri stood up. I put them in the Podesta suite. It was the only room that had a bed big enough for all three and I didn't want to chance them waking up separately. Shota nodded, lurching to his feet. You did good, Nem. Thank you. You should go see your mate and pup. She nodded, leaving the room in silence. Shota turned towards his alphas still seated on the couch. Is it even possible? Could they be our missing pups? He whined, making the two stand and hold him close. I don't know, kitten, but we can always hope. Nem was right though, the odds of them not being our pups are slim with everything she saw. But we can't know for sure unless we meet them. You ready for that? Hizashi reassured the Omega. Shota nodded. I need to know. It's been years with no word, no information. I need to know. Oboro grabbed Shota's hand, Hizashi following suit on the other side. Well then, let's go see the new pups. Izuku tensed at the sound of someone at the door. Hitoshi and Denki, who had woken up not even 5 minutes prior, hurried to get behind the greenette. They had discussed the possibility of needing to fight their way out of the room and probably even the building, but Hitoshi, ever the voice of reason, had suggested simply waiting to see if the person could be trusted. He was correct when he said that they needed to know if they were in danger. He hissed as the 3 men walked into the room, closing the door behind them. He couldn't help but recognize them. We didn't mean to trespass on your territory, sirs. He stated simply, keeping his eyes on them but not their eyes. He needed to get his pack out of what he now knew was a compound run by the 3 most terrifying mafia bosses he had ever heard of. You know who we are? The black-haired one asked. Izuku nodded, Eraserhead, Screech and Storm. The 3 bosses of the Shirayamazawa family, mated to each other. Not much is known, but what is said is you turned most of your allies away from trafficking children and omegas. The blonde one, Screech, tilted his head, should be all of our allies. Not most. Izuku couldn't stop his scoff at the alpha's words. Maybe that you know of, but do you really think 3 kids chose to walk across the country alone? He paused at the hand on his shoulder. Aizu, we should find out what they want with us. Toshi whispered softly. Izuku gave a barely their nod. Why are we here? We didn't do anything other than protect ourselves from an alpha that wouldn't take no for an answer. Izuku asked. The 3 adults exchanged glances before the blue-haired one, Storm, spoke. Our friend and packmate, Namuri, who's better known as Midnight, saw your fight with the alpha. We aren't mad that you killed him, we would have done the same in your shoes. But some things you did and said caught her attention, so she brought you to us. Izuku took a chance, looking them in the eyes directly. Like what? Eraserhead stepped forward, your quirk, yours and your brother's hair color and frankly, your age. Izuku frowned, what does that have to do with anything? Eraserhead sighed, nearly 9 years ago, someone we thought we could trust took our twin pups from their bed and left the territory with them. We've tried for years to find them but found nothing. Not until now. Izuku liked his lips, you think Toshi and I are your missing pups? Eraserhead nodded, you are the right ages, your hair colors are correct, and your quirk is a perfect collection of the 3 of ours, he smiled softly, plus you keep calling your brother, Toshi, and our pups' names are Izuku and Hitoshi. Hitoshi gasped, his grip on Izuku tightening. Aizu? Is it possible? Izuku nodded before turning back to the adults. How would you be able to tell if it were the case, Eraserhead? The man huffed with amusement, call me Shota for now and that's easy, a simple blood test would tell us everything we needed to know. You both just have to agree to it. Izuku turned from them and eyed his brother. What do you think, Toshi? Should we do it? Hitoshi nodded, can't hurt. At worst, we aren't their missing kids. At best, we will be safe. Izuku's attention snapped back as Screech stepped forward. You'd be safe even if you weren't our pups. We don't hurt kids. You'd have a home here either way, no matter what the answer was. Fine. Then we agree to the blood test. Izuku answered. Shota thanked Chiyo as she left with the vials of blood from the pups. He grinned at Izuku and Hitoshi, attempting to alleviate any of their fears. He and his mates had guided the 3 boys back to their office, settling them down on the couches and had already ordered some food for the group. So, why don't we talk while waiting for the results? Shota spoke, nestled between his 2 alpha mates. Izuku sighed, what do you want to know? Hizashi grinned, why don't you tell us about your life so far? What made 3 children leave for the streets? Izuku stared at the blonde alpha curiously before speaking. Hitoshi and I don't remember too much of our childhood. Our earliest memory is of an orphanage on the other side of Japan. It was a rickety old building, barely cared for, but the woman who ran it was decent at least. Hitoshi and I were the eldest there most of the time we were there, most of the others were barely out of diapers, but we helped where we could. She was nice to us even after our quirks manifested. Her son, on the other hand, was cruel and hated our quirks, constantly calling us names and making the other children fear us. We dealt with it, ignoring him mostly, but when the old broad died, well, he became insufferable. A few months after we turned 9, Hitoshi overheard him on the phone. He was discussing the prospect of selling us to someone. From what we understood, they wanted Hitoshi for his quirk and me because of my secondary gender. He held his brother's hand. That night after he went to sleep, Hitoshi and I stole some food and supplies before we left. If I may ask, Hizashi started, what is your quirk, Hitoshi? Hitoshi shuddered, the quirk doctor tried to name it brainwashing but I managed to get him to change it to Siren Song. Basically, if someone responds to something I say while it's turned on, I can then make them obey any order I give. It used to be just with questions, but after Izu helped me train it, I was able to use any type of conversation as well as turn it on and off. He paused. The lady's son wasn't so understanding of my being only a child, and Hitoshi curled in on himself. The BSTRD put a muzzle on Toshi. Izuku finished, snarling loudly. Hizashi hissed, "What is his name?" Izuku raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Kayotaki, screech sir." Hizashi faltered slightly. "You can call us by our names, kiddo. You already know Shota and I'm Hizashi, that's Oboro." Izuku nodded, still rubbing his brother's back. Oboro, having been silent this whole time, spoke then. "So, you left? That was brave of you too." Izuku smiled softly. "Yeah." Hitoshi was nearly mute by the time we left, and finding out that we were supposed to be sold scared us more than the mystery of the streets. And it worked out in the end. We got free and eventually, we met Denki here, he giggled, sounding more like a child. Imagine our surprise when he turned out to be Toshi's mate. Hizashi laughed boldly at that. "I can imagine." He faced the smaller blonde. "So how did you guys meet?" Denki glanced at Hitoshi, who nodded for courage. "I was abandoned by my parents a few years prior to that. My ma didn't want me, and my pa hated my quirk after it manifested. A month after kicking me out, they moved away, so I don't know where they went. I ran into Toshi and Izu while searching for food in some bins. I'd had a quirk accident and short-circuited, leaving me out cold for a few hours, and I missed out on the locals doing their Feed the Homeless event they did once a week. I met them when they came out of an alley with Izuku completely covered in blood. They had been running from some guys and Izu went completely feral, killing one of them. Toshi told me later that he didn't know what was going on and tried to stop Izu but ended up getting a claw scratch to the face before Toshi was able to ensnare Izu with his quirk and snap him out of it. I knew all the safe spots that I used for bathing, so I led them to the nearest one, keeping watch as Toshi helped Izu clean up. They ended up joining me at my hiding spot for a few days when Izu fell into a dissociative state. It was during that time that Toshi and I realized we were mates. We bonded, but since we haven't had our first rut and heat, it wasn't complete." Hizashi sighed. "I'm sorry that happened to you. Your parents didn't deserve a pup like you, and I'm glad you found these two and stayed as safe as possible." Oboro nodded in agreement. "That's true. We try to keep the streets as safe for pups and omegas as we can, and unfortunately, it seems like it's not as safe as we thought, so we are sorry about that." Izuku snorted. "It's not like you can control anything outside your territory, and even if you could, some people don't listen to direction very well. You can't be everywhere at once during all times, so it's not like you actually need to apologize." He smiled, his teeth bared fully. "Besides, we are safe now, right? We survived, and there are two bad people who won't be able to hurt anyone ever again. Do I wish I hadn't needed to kill them? Yes. Do I regret it? Not in the slightest. If it hadn't had been us, it would have been someone else, and that person might not have been able to protect themselves like we could." The adults laughed. "That's fair, pup," Shota said, ruffling Izuku's hair. He froze as Izuku tensed, his hands still buried in the fluffy green locks. He jerked back. Sorry. I should have asked." Izuku stared at the older Omega. "Do it again." Shota blinked, staring back at the kid. He was shocked that Izuku actually wanted someone to touch his hair, since he had been so tense earlier with even the thought of the three adults coming close to his pack. He inched his hand closer to the lump of green, watching for any sign that he needed to back off before making contact. Shota rubbed his fingers through the pup's hair, smiling softly as purrs vibrated through the air. He watched Izuku's eyes slowly shut as he pushed towards the elder's hand. This kid was definitely touch-starved. He turned at a whine coming from one of the other kids. Hitoshi and Denki both looked at Shota's hand with longing, probably wishing that they could get head scritchies too. Izuku opened his eyes, catching the gaze of the two adult alphas before nodding his consent. Shota grinned as Hizashi squealed with joy, his hands reaching steadily towards Denki while Oboro moved towards Hitoshi. Soon enough the three pups were cuddled up to one of each adult, their hair and scalp being played with to heart's content. The three pairs paused as a knock sounded on the door. "Enter." Oboro boomed, his voice gravelly and stern. They all waited as the doctor from earlier entered, a kind smile on her face when she noted the closeness of the group. "Well?" Shota asked, his heart attempting to break out of his chest. He wanted these kids to be his lost pups, but at the same time, even if they weren't, he knew he wouldn't let them go. They were his now, even if not by blood. He watched as Chio smiled larger before speaking. "Izuku and Hitoshi are indeed our missing pups. I took the liberty of also checking their basic health things like sugars and cholesterol and such, and I'm happy to say that other than malnutrition, they are healthy. Congrats you three." There was a shriek from Hizashi, his arms finding the two boys and gripping them in a bear hug. "My boys! My babies. Home again. He screamed, thankfully without use of his quirk. Shota and Oboro laughed at his antics and cuddled in closer. Out of the corner of his eyes he could see Denki sitting on the couch alone. Come here, Denki. You might not be our son by blood, but you are Hitoshi's mate. You are still wanted here and will be loved greatly. Denki lit up at his words, jumping into the fray. Shota watched as Hitoshi smirked and kissed the blonde's cheek, making him blush red. After a few moments more of hugging and celebrating, Izuku pushed his way out of the pile. So, what next? He twisted his fingers, his eyes flighting around the room but never settling on any of the adults. Hizashi was the one to answer. Well, kiddo, if you don't mind, I would like us to send you and Hitoshi both, parent to pup. After that's done then we can pack sent Denki so everyone will know he's ours. We will have to do a larger, more thorough pack scenting when it becomes a more decent hour tomorrow, but I'd be happy with a simple one for now. His eyes became glassy with tears of joy. Would that be okay? The adults in the room held their breath as the three children exchanged unspoken communications. Finally, Izuku smiled. That sounds amazing to us. Tensei glanced sideways at his little brother. The last few days had been difficult for them both but they had survived. It was supposed to be a simple alliance signing but it had quickly turned deadly, both sides losing fighters. Tensei didn't understand what the other Mafia crew had to gain from the ambush, it just didn't make sense and had destroyed more than it should have. And now, Tensei was the guardian of a heartbroken 9-year-old boy who had to watch his parents be murdered. Tensei shuffled closer to the sleeping pup, his hands softly playing with the bluish strands. He had almost lost his whole family, Tenya having been so close to death before Tensei managed to get to him. If he had gotten there a minute later, Tenya would have been dead and he would have lost his entire family. Pushing aside a bit of hair, Tensei paused at seeing the newly scabbed cut running across his brother's left eye. The doctor they had seen claimed that it didn't do any damage to his eyesight but to keep watch for any pain and infections. The driver stopped the car, another low-level member quickly opening the side door for Tensei. Sir, the bosses are expecting you in an hour. They ask that you meet them in their office with young Tenya. Tensei nodded, scooping his still sleeping brother into his arms. He was silent during his walk back to the suites that had been his family's, softly laying Tenya down on one of the couches before crumpling into another. He couldn't chance his brother waking and seeing Tensei break. His brother needed him even more now. Soon enough it was time to wake Tenya. Tensei was soft-spoken, gently shaking the sleeping boy. Hey Tenya, time to wake up kiddo. He watched as his brother stretched, a grin on his face. Tensei could see the moment the memories came rushing back as Tenya's smile fell. I know buddy. But it'll be okay. We are safe and at home and your uncles will help us get our revenge. He stood, slipping his shoes back on. Come on pup. They want to see us in their office. I'm sure Momo misses you. Tenya, normal full of joy at the mention of the other alpha child, grew solemn. Do you think anyone is going to say anything about my face? He asked. Tensei shrugged. You know how your uncle Hizashi is. He will take one look at it and burst into tears at the thought of you being hurt. Tenya cracked a small smile. Yeah, he always was a bit emotional when it came to family. Tensei sighed with relief as he snorted. I believe that is an understatement. He glanced at his watch. Come on kiddo, we should get going. The office was all ready when they arrived, meaning they needed to pull up a few more chairs. Like Tensei had said, Hizashi immediately went into his protective mode once he saw Tenya's face, babying the poor boy and making him blush. After around 30 minutes, Shota addressed Momo. Hey Momo? Why don't you take Tenya to meet the other kids while we debrief Tensei? Momo grinned, nodding along. Ooh. Yes, come on Ten, you'll like the others. The adults watched silently as she dragged the boy out of the room. Tensei turned to his friends and siblings. Other kids? He asked, confused. Shota, Hizashi and Oboro exchanged grins. Nem found them. Our pups. Izuku and Hitoshi are home. The room was silent before Shota's words clicked in Tensei's brain. He jumped up, hugging them. Holy sheet. That's amazing guys. He yelled. Shota laughed and nodded. Yeah. Blood tests confirmed it. And Hitoshi already found his mate who takes after Oboro and Hizashi. Denki is a mini Hizashi, all the way down to being a blonde. Tensei let out a full-bodied laugh. Oh, that's perfect. Guys, I am so happy for you. This is amazing news. He faced Namiri. How did you find them? Namiri shrugged. It honestly wasn't my plan, but I saw this alpha harassing the 3 pups and followed them into an alley. I ended up watching Izuku use his quirk when the alpha, who was hitting on and trying to touch Denki, not take the hint. Izuku went semi-feral and clawed up the alpha pretty bad before breaking his neck. Too many things were adding up, plus I didn't want to leave 3 pups that still had their milk scents on the streets, so I gassed them and brought them home. Tensei's eyes were wide with shock. Holy shit. That's scary. So Izuku took on an alpha to protect his pack. He'll be a good alpha to follow. Hizashi snorted. Izuku is an Omega. An Omega Prime to be exact. Hitoshi is the only alpha of the 3 of them. His neck cracked with how fast he turned his head. DMN, that's even better. Holy shit, your pups are awesome and I don't even know their quirks yet. The adults chuckled at his words before Oboro spoke. Izuku has a mix of our quirks. He can release clouds from his mouth that if they touch someone, can stop that person's quirk for around 5 minutes. Hitoshi has a mind control quirk they call Siren Song. He can control anyone who responds to something he says while it's turned on. And Denki, he has an electricity quirk. Izuku said it makes him a human taser. His jaw dropped. Those were some powerful quirks. DMN, now I really can't wait to meet them. I think they'll be good friends for Tenya. He sighed, his head tilting back. He could use all the happiness he can get right now. The 3 bosses nodded, Shota growling. What happened, Tensei? This was supposed to be an alliance signing. How did it turn into a massacre? Tensei growled. We arrived like planned. The leaders were polite and friendly as they showed us our rooms and fed us dinner. There was a lot of talk about the future and how things could get better for everyone, but nothing really sent up any flags. The second in command, his name was Kaizome, he didn't seem too thrilled to see us there, but Mom put that down to simply being uneasy to have outsiders in their space, so we didn't think anything of it. The next morning we were in the meeting hall when we heard fighting outside the room. Mom and Dad asked Kaizome what was going on, but the man didn't say anything before the doors blew open and fighters came in. I shoved Tenya under the table and turned to face the fight, where I realized that it was between our guards and Kiryaka's guards. When Mom cried out in pain, I realized Kiryaka's third had stabbed Mom in her chest and Dad was able to take him out, but then Kaizome got Dad. I fought off a few of their members myself as I tried to get back to Tenya. Tensei could feel tears falling down his face, his breathing harsh and ragged. I almost didn't make it back to him in time. Kaizome had a grip on Tenya's clothes and his knife was raised. If I had been only a minute later, Tenya would be dead too. I admit, I definitely went feral, and when I came back to myself, the biggest piece of the man we could find was his head and I was covered in blood. Our remaining guards took care of the rest of their guards, leaving only those who stopped fighting alive and Kiryaka, who ran as soon as it looked like we would win. Shuichi, an alpha with a lizard mutation, let me know that most of the people in their territory had no idea what was about to happen and offered his assistance in the transference of power from the Kiryaka family to you 3. He said he had heard great things about our pack and was horrified to see what his own leader had planned. He's keeping order and burying their dead while I am here with Tenya. Tensei looked up. To see the 3 bosses exchange looks. You did good, Tensei. The Kiryaka territory borders ours, so it will be a simple adjustment. Do you think this Shuichi can be trusted? Tensei nodded. Yes, Naomasa offered up the use of his quirk. Shuichi didn't lie once, and a few of the others who Naomasa talked to were saying the same thing. Hizashi nodded. I guess all that we really need to decide now is who is going to visit their compound for the proper transferring. Namuri bit her lip. Sure, and I can go as well for extra protection. She tilted her head. Why don't all 3 of you go? You work better together rather than separate, and since you 3 are equal partners, it is technically needed that all 3 of you go. Shota sighed. What about the kids? We can't all go and leave them here alone. Namuri waved her hand. We can take them with us. They can bond on the trip and Tenya won't be alone. I'm sure Vlad and Inui can handle the day-to-day things here, they have before. Plus we'd only be an hour or so away if we're needed. That is actually a good point, Namuri. Oboro agreed. It will take a few days to get prepared to go, but you are right, all 3 of us need to be there for the paperwork. He addressed Tensei again. Can you let this Shuichi know the plans? Don't tell him when we will arrive, just that it'll be a few days and we'll call when we are about to arrive. That shouldn't give them enough time to plan anything again and will hopefully keep us safe. He faced his mates. We need to contact our other allies and let them know what happened and what is going to happen. The Kiryaka family had a few allies of their own, so we need to also schedule alliance meetings and whatnot. Tensei stood and stretched. If it is okay, I'm going to go find Tenya and get some rest. I am going to need to take Tenya into town in a few days to see the doctors about his glasses, and we can probably get a small bit of shopping done while we are out. Hizashi hugged the alpha. Put the bills on our accounts. We'll take care of everything. I'm just so glad you both are okay and alive. Oboro was next. Let me know what Shuichi says and ask him if he knows if their territory has any dire needs. A leader who would do this might be the kind to also not take care of his territory like they should. Tensei nodded, facing the final boss. Shota stared Tensei in his eyes. Thank you for everything, Ten. You are the best friend and brother any of us could ever ask for. We'll do right by your parents and properly put them to rest before heading back there. They will get justice. Tensei smiled and nodded, not needing to say anything. Namuri followed him out of the room, insisting on being there when he met the other pups. When they opened the door to the lounge, Tensei was happy to see Tenya talking animatedly again, his arms waving about in a way that he hadn't seen before, the small green-haired boy talking just back just as fast. He chuckled as he realized they were talking about quirk science. Specifically, Tenya's quirk. The sound in the room ceased as Tensei walked further in. Hello kiddos, I'm Tensei, Tenya's brother. It's great to finally meet you three. Hizashi and Oboro have told me a lot about you guys. He introduced himself cleanly and with a smile as Namuri quietly ushered Momo out of the room. Izuku tilted his head, his eyes dilating and widening. Oh shit. I know you. You helped Toshi and I over in Hosu when that store employee tried to have us arrested for simply being in there. Tensei thought back to that moment, his eyes widening. DMN Green Bean, that was you? He laughed. Small world, I guess. Did you two have any more trouble after that? He asked. Izuku shook his head. Nah. The next time we came in there before we left for Muzurafu, the actual owner was there. Actually, you being here explains why he was so scared of us. Tensei tilted his head. Scared? All I did was speak to him about what I saw. Everyone in Hosu knows that the bosses don't approve of quirk discrimination. He had to bite back a laugh as he heard Hitoshi whisper to who he was pretty sure was Denki, how fing big is our dad's territory. Izuku shrugged. I don't know why he was scared or if he even was, but he was more than polite to us while we were in there, which is something we didn't get very often since we left Miyagi Prefecture. Tensei frowned. You've walked all the way from Miyagi? Was there a reason? Izuku snorted. We were in an orphanage and the owner wanted to sell us for Toshi's quirk and my secondary gender. We ditched that night and a few days later met Denki. We knew we needed to get somewhere that didn't come with a chance of being returned to the orphanage, so we kept walking. Tensei nodded. Oh DMN. Okay, that's tough, but I'm glad you made your way back to us, even if it wasn't part of the plan. He grinned at Hitoshi. To answer your question, your dads control all the way from Tokyo through to Gifu. And now, because of some betrayal, they will also control the Mie, Shiga, and Kyoto prefectures. He watched as Tenya tensed up. Don't worry, little brother. Everything will be just fine. He yawned, popping his back. Anyways, it's late. Probably should get some rest. It was nice meeting you three. He smiled softly at the look of contentment on his brother's face. As he tucked Tenya into his bed, he asked, Did you enjoy meeting Izuku, Hitoshi, and Denki? Tenya fought the sleep fog. Yeah. They were really nice and Izu is super smart. I'm glad I have someone to talk quirks with. Momo is smart too, but she doesn't like quirks as much as I do. Hitoshi and Denki are funny and didn't mind me joining their conversation. He stuttered off, his voice slurring as he fell asleep. Tensei huffed happily. He was glad his brother had something else to think about today. He yawned again before leaving Tenya's room and crawling into his own bed, falling asleep quickly. Tenya held up a book on quirk science, showing Izuku his find. Ooh. I've read that 11010, it's really good, so you'll love it. He grinned, placing the book in the cart. Izuku and he had gone into town with Tensei, hoping to find a bookstore and a few snacks for their late-night gaming sessions. So far, they had found a ton of books not just on quirk science but also had found chemistry books for Momo, mystery novels for Hitoshi and game guides for Denki, who had been thrilled when he found out that the compound had a game corner in the lounge. We should probably stop here 1010. We can always come back and get more, but we have to carry all of these back to the car. Izuku mentioned. Tenya nodded. Yeah, that's probably best. Tensei gave me his card so we could pay for everything we got, so that's good. Izuku followed the tall alpha up to the counter, watching as Tenya paid for their books before leading them out of the building and down the street. They ended up stopping a few times, either to adjust their grips on the bags or to look through the windows of the various shops, but eventually, the building they had left Tensei in was within their view. Izuku glanced at Tenya, his smile dropping as he noticed Tenya staring into an alley. Izuku followed his line of sight, confused when he didn't see anything. Ten? You okay? He asked. Tenya tilted his head. I don't know, Izu. I feel weird, like something is pulling me in that direction. Izuku growled. Do you think that it's a quirk? Tenya shook his head. No. It feels more primal than that. Izuku nodded. Let me go put the bags down in the car and we can go check it out. Don't go without me. Tenya didn't look away from the alley as he nodded, barely noting Izuku leaving and then returning a short moment later. Okay 10, let's go see what the pull is. Is it getting stronger? They began to walk. Tenya nodded. Every step we take makes it feel more and more of my urges. Like, at first, it was just in my brain, like the barest shadow, but now it's covering my whole upper half. Izuku frowned. Let me know if it gets worse or better. Tenya didn't answer, his attention on the upcoming opening of the alley that led to another street. Izuku could hear the cars and people bustling about, the sound growing louder as they arrived at middle of it. Tenya? Is it stronger? He sighed as Tenya didn't answer, his whole body facing the left before taking off, thankfully not using his quirk. Izuku growled, quickly chasing after the blueonette. It was difficult, but he managed to keep up, coming to a stop beside his cousin. Don't do that again, Tenya-ida. He roared, grabbing the boy's shoulders. Tenya didn't answer him, didn't even look at him. Izuku sighed heavily. Is the feeling stronger? Again, Tenya didn't answer. Instead, he snarled, his stance becoming rigid as if he were preparing for a fight. Izuku took in the signal, preparing as well, and they waited. For what, Izuku wasn't sure, but it had to be important for the normally calm boy to be acting so unusual. The first thing they heard was yelling. It sounded like someone was angry at another person, and it was getting louder. Izuku braced himself, the sound of running feet and multiple voices coming closer. Then he saw what was causing the noise. A girl, small like Izuku, with pink hair and overalls that were dirty and torn. Chasing her down the alley was a group of men, ones that Izuku was sure didn't belong anywhere within his parents' territory. Tenya stepped forward, but Izuku placed a hand on his shoulder. I will take care of them. You keep her safe. Izuku didn't wait for Tenya's nod of agreement, quickly placing himself between the girl and the men once they were within distance. Why are you chasing that girl? He asked, his voice stern and calm. He could tell the men were all alphas, angry and self-assured. The girl, from what he could smell, was definitely an Omega, which didn't leave Izuku with a good feeling. One of the men stepped closer. That Omega belongs to us. The beach thought she could run from us like we wouldn't follow her. Give her back or we will take her by force. Izuku laughed, spilling some of his quirked clouds. I see you don't know who I am and where you are. This is the Shirayamazawa family's territory, and I know for a fact that the bosses won't take too kindly to knothead alphas trying to take an Omega, a child one at that, against her will. She does not belong to you or anyone other than herself. He spoke calmly, his voice sure and level. Without taking his eyes off the alphas, he called over his shoulder. 10, call your brother. The first alpha growled, you don't seem to understand the danger you're in, little pup. There is 5 of us and only one of you. Izuku laughed again before cutting off with a snarl. No. I don't think you know the danger you are all in. My name is Izuku Shirayamazawa. I have killed alphas for less than what you are doing now. Leave before you join them. He tilted his head, his stare constant and narrowed. He could see some of the other alphas back away, fear shining in their eyes, but none of them left. I won't warn you again. Leave. He hissed, breathing out more clouds. The main alpha stepped into the small cloud. You don't scare me with your little clouds, pup, and you are making me angry. He gnashed his teeth. I'm going to enjoy killing you. The man's skin rippled, but nothing happened, much to the alpha's shock. His eyes grew wide and Izuku could see his breaths coming faster as panic set in. What did you do? Why won't my quirk work? He screeched. Izuku rolled his eyes. I told you who I was. You obviously know who the bosses of this territory are. Is it so hard for your tiny brain to think that maybe I can do the same thing? His words weren't really meant to goad on the alpha, to anger him more, but if there was one thing he knew, it was that when some people got mad, they were more likely to make mistakes. And mistakes could be deadly. The other alphas backed away, but the front man grew angrier. Give me back my quirk. He roared as he pounced, his claws flying towards Izuku's neck. Weaving his torso around to dodge yet keep his sight on the other alphas, Izuku spoke to Tenya. 10, F1, he had spent some of the car ride into town letting the youngest Ida know about his and his brother's codes for plans that Izuku sometimes implemented. F1 was short for Izuku going into the first level of being feral, where he would be just feral enough to have an edge with his senses but not enough to deem allies as threats. The alpha swung again, one of his claws just barely catching on Izuku's shirt, tearing it up and away. Izuku could hear Tenya's panicked Izuku, but before he could reassure his cousin that he was fine, he had an armful of furious alpha attempting to claw his guts out. He hissed as claws sunk into his stomach and arms, drawing blood as they tore skin ragged. F4. He called, delving deeper into his feral state. He threw the alpha off of him and towards the other alphas, jumping onto the offender. He fought hard, clawing, biting and erasing quirks as the other 4 alphas jumped into the fight. 5 against 1 was tough, but Izuku had fought with worse odds at lower levels of his feral state, so he wasn't really worried, not that those particular thoughts were going through his head. Izuku came back to himself gradually, groaning as the pain from his wound seeped into his mind. He fell to his knee, barely managing to stay upright as sound slowly came back along with the clarity of his own mind. 10. He whispered, his throat raw. He felt hands on his shoulders, pulling him into a bridle position. He could smell Tensei's motor and parchment scents around him. Uncle. I had no choice. I tried to waste time for you to get there but the leader kept attacking. I'm sorry, please tell my dads that. His voice was gnarled, a bag of rocks being dragged through crisp snow. Izuku, you'll be fine. Just stay awake until we get home to Chiyo. You can tell your dads yourself. Tensei pleaded. He had called the three men, unable to snap Izuku out of his feral state and could only watch as his nephew and future boss fought 5 full-grown alphas at once. Shota had answered the phone, the words tumbling out of Tensei's mouth causing the strong Omega man to scream for his mates. Tensei guided the 2 other pups to the car while carrying the third, talking to the small green pup in an attempt to keep him awake. Tell, Toshi, I'm so sorry. Izuku slurred, his voice growing weaker as the blood flowed freely. Stay awake Izuku. Keep talking to me. Tensei ordered, throwing a bit of alpha voice into the order even though he knew the Omega Prime wouldn't react to it. Izuku didn't answer, his body limp in the older man's arms. The driver sped through the streets, obeying absolutely no traffic laws. Thankfully, there were no accidents before they could make it to the compound. Tensei jumped out of the still-moving car, a still-limp Izuku in his arms and ran to the hospital wing. He kicked the door open, screaming for Chiyo who was beside him in an instant. She pushed him aside, go get the boys. He's lost way too much blood and they will need to donate. Tensei nodded, leaving the room before racing down the hall to the boss's office. He threw the doors open, not caring that it was rude as he knew the men would want to know he was there as soon as possible. He's with Chiyo, she says you'll need to donate blood. He relayed, stepping aside for the stampede of worried dads. He followed them back to where he had left Izuku, his mind racing. Chiyo indeed made the 3 men donate blood, making them each tired and cranky. Tensei had made himself useful, rushing to get food and drinks for them and finding Tenya and the girl they had helped, who was being taken care of by Hitoshi, Denki, and Momo. Hitoshi nodded silently at Tensei, not asking any questions that Tensei couldn't yet answer and for that he was grateful. A few hours passed before Chiyo deemed Izuku out of danger, much to the relief of the 4 men. Tensei, upon hearing the news, fell to his knees, adrenaline leaving him all at once, only looking up at the hand on his shoulder. Seeing who it was he spoke, I'm so sorry Sho. I was almost too late. You trusted me with your son, and he almost died because I wasn't there with him. Silence met his words before Shota pulled him to his feet. Izuku would have definitely died had you not gotten him here. You saved him as best as you could and for that, I thank you. Izuku knows that if he introduces himself that anyone in our territory should do what he says. You didn't know someone who didn't belong in these parts would be around and from what you told me, Izuku did what he could to keep from fighting. He smiled softly. Chiyo says he will be fine with some rest. She's healed his wounds and given him blood which is all he needs now so while we wait for him to wake up, we should meet this young pup that Tenya and Izuku saved. Oboro was right, of course. There was nothing they could do besides that. Tensei nodded, I checked on them while you guys were giving blood. The others have them in the lounge. Momo seems happy to have another female around. They found the children still in the lounge, the group of pups talking and laughing softly as they got to know one another. The pink-haired girl noticed the adults first, tensing up. Tenya was next, racing over to them. How's Izu? Is he okay? He rambled, drawing the other children closer. Shota nodded, Izuku will be fine. Chiyo healed him right up and we all gave blood to replace what was lost. He just needs some rest now. He smiled softly at the girl. Hello. My name is Shota Shirayamazawa. I'm one of the bosses around here and these 2 are my mates. He offered, pointing out the 2 next to him. You are safe here. We just want to hear your story and help as much as we can, okay? The girl glanced at Tenya, who nodded. And my name is Mei Hatsum. I'm sorry Izuku got hurt helping me. She muttered, looking down at her shoes. The adults could see how tattered they were, dirt crusting the bottom and sides. Her clothes were also covered but seems as if someone, probably Momo, had tried to help the girl clean up a bit. Don't worry about that Mei. He'll be fine, I promise no one is mad okay? His voice was soft, cooing slightly. She nodded. So why don't we all sit down and you tell us what happened? Mei was silent but easily sat next to Tenya who pulled her into his arms. Those alphas wanted me because I'm an Omega. They said they wanted to sell me to some guy who wanted Omega children for some testing he was doing. I've been running from them for a few weeks. I would get away for a few days but then they always seemed to find me and I don't know how. I couldn't get away and they scared me so much. Tenya pulled her into his lap, blushing at the look Shota gave him. "Why didn't you go to your parents?" Hizashi asked, his head tilted slightly. Mei whimpered, "My parents left me. They said they didn't want an Omega pup and didn't think I was useful enough, so they kicked me out and left me." She buried her face into Tenya's chest, tears audible even as they were muffled. The adults let the girl cry for a moment before Tensei interrupted. "Hey Tenya? Why were you and Izuku on that street anyways? The bookstore was on the street we were already on." Tenya frowned, rubbing Mei's back before telling him about the feeling in his head and chest that stopped when Mei was in his arms. Mei stiffened. "I felt the same thing. I followed the feeling because it didn't feel bad, but I was still nervous. It was one of the Alpha's quirks." Shota grinned at his mates. "Sounds familiar." Tensei chuckled, shaking his head. "Tenya, Mei. That feeling means you've found your mate. Sometimes, when mates are close, if one of them is in danger, they both get feelings like you did to help direct you both together so the one in danger can be protected." Hizashi chirped, "That's right. And after you completely bond, that feeling can sometimes pop back up, warning the other of any danger. It saved our lives quite a few times." Oboro and Shota nodded in agreement. Mei pulled away from Tenya. "But I'm not." Tenya hushed her. "If you were about to say that you didn't deserve a mate or that you weren't useful, please don't. You are perfect. I don't care if you are an Omega. I don't care if you have a powerful quirk or even if you are quirkless. You are mine and I will protect you with all I have. And if it is the future you are afraid of, then that's okay. We can just be friends for now and learn about each other first." Mei tilted her head. "You don't care that I'm not powerful? That's all my parents wanted. All I can do is make my eyes zoom in like binoculars. I'm not even pretty." Tenya nodded. "You don't have to be powerful to deserve love and care from me. Your parents were fools and I'm glad I found you." He gripped her chin and directed her to look at him. "And no, you aren't pretty. You're beautiful." Mei grinned through her tears. "Thanks, engines." She teased, laughing when Tenya choked. The children laughed. "Hey Mei? I'm glad the boys rescued you. It was getting a bit stuffy in here as the only girl." Mei smiled at her. "I can't wait for those tea parties you were telling me about. I've never been to one before." Hitoshi edged around the group until he reached Tensei. "How deep in feral mode did he get?" he whispered. Tensei bit his lip. Tenya said level 4. Hitoshi hissed, "DMN it. I should have gone with you guys this morning. He wouldn't have been so hurt if I had." Tensei faced the young alpha fully. "Toshi, I know for a fact that he wouldn't blame you for not going. He said so while we were driving into town. So don't you blame yourself. He will be fine and awake by morning where you can scold him for trying to fight 5 alphas at once without backup." Hitoshi snorted. "Yeah, he's had worse odds before though. Right before we met Denki, we got cornered by this whole gang. They didn't like that I was on their territory. They didn't care he was, but as an alpha they hated me. It got worse when they figured out his secondary gender. He's always tried to be diplomatic first, but then one of them attacked us and Izuku went feral, killing the man while the others ran off. I guess it's not really the same since the others of that gang didn't fight, but it could have been." Tensei nodded. "Yeah, but you guys survived and made your way here and that's all we could ask for." Hizashi, who had been listening in, spoke up. "Tensei's right, Toshi. No one knew this was going to happen, but Izuku made a choice to protect Mei and it was his choice alone. We can't go back in time and stop it from happening, we can only move forward." The room went silent as a knock echoed on the door. Chio entered. "He's awake." Momo was thrilled. Her parents asked her if she would be okay if they adopted Mei as her new sister and she practically screamed her agreement. She couldn't wait to get back from the market in town with all Mei's new things. Momo had wanted Mei to come with them, but the pink-haired girl needed a complete checkup with Chio to make sure that her time on the streets didn't make her sick. Momo understood that and vowed to bring back the best things. The only things they wouldn't be getting were basic nesting materials since Mei wasn't yet old enough to need one. None of the pups in the pack were old enough for nests or dens yet. "Momo, why don't you go down to that clothing one, the one under the red tent, and see if you can find anything for your new sister? Here's some money, feel free to get yourself something if you want it," her mom offered, shoving a wad of yen into her hands. Momo nodded, sticking the wad into her pocket. She knew that Mei didn't really like the more traditional girly clothes, preferring stuff like jeans and overalls versus skirts and shorts. Momo had found some good outfits already at some of the other stalls and she could see the abundance of overalls at the tent she was headed to. Momo smiled as she picked up another pair of pants, ones that were blue like Tenten's hair, quickly handing them off to the stall seller for holding when she felt a shiver down her spine. Silently, she glanced around, shrugging when she didn't see anything. She tried to find more things Mei would like but couldn't get past the feeling that someone was watching her, so she paid for everything and began to head back to where she had left her parents. She was within sight of them when someone grabbed her arm, dragging her into an alley. The man tossed her against the wall, his hand covering her mouth to stop her from screaming. "Look what I've got. A little pup all alone and without protection. I've been watching you, she said you would be the easiest to get to and now I've got you." He purred, his face inches from hers. Momo's eyes widened and she began to shake. Who was he talking about? Who told him about her? What did he want with her? She started to wiggle, attempting to escape. Little girl. Don't even think about it. You don't want me angry. He growled. Momo's heart began to race. She needed to figure out how to escape the man, but she didn't know anything about him. She couldn't even smell what his secondary gender was. She forced her eyes closed as he reached down to his pants. She paid me to get rid of you, but she didn't say I had to do it right away. I'm gonna have my fun with you first. His words swam in her mind before settling and she panicked, struggling harder until he slapped her cheek. Stop moving, you little beach. He snarled, placing his hand back over her mouth. Momo, with not a moment to lose, bit him, drawing blood from his hand. He screeched as he dropped her, allowing her to move. She ran back towards the mouth of the alley, but just as she made it to the main street, he caught up with her, slamming her back into the wall, her head clashing against the brick. I told you not to try anything. He hissed. She cried out as his claws pierced her shoulder, drawing rivers of blood. She was terrified, she had nothing else she could do and she doubted that her parents would hear her scream before he managed to kill her. As his other hand raised for the kill, she closed her eyes. Suddenly, the pressure was off of her, and she fell to the ground. Hey! We need to get out of here. She looked up at the speaker, eyes widening when she saw a girl her age holding out her hand. The girl had headphone jacks dangling down past ears that were almost hidden behind purple locks. I knocked him away with one of my sound blasts, but he's going to get up sooner or later, so we need to run. Momo nodded, wincing as her head blared with pain. My parents are in the market. They can stop him. The other girl nodded, helping Momo stand. They hurried back into the sunlit street, glancing back with fear in case the man followed them, but they didn't see him come out of the alley. Momo! Where are you? Momo heard her mother cry out. That's my mom. She must be worried sick. One of our pack mates just got attacked the other day and he nearly died. This was supposed to be a safe outing. She explained, leading the other girl to where Namuri stood. Her father saw her first, nudging his mate and pointing out their daughter who was being held up by a stranger. Namuri gasped as they ran over to Momo, checking her over and hissing at the still bleeding wound on her shoulder. Mom, this guy, he dragged me into an alley. He was going to kill me, Mom. He tried to dash. Momo couldn't breathe, her vision blacking out. She knew what a panic attack was but hadn't had one in so long that she couldn't remember how to stop it. She didn't know how much time had passed, only that when she could hear and see her surroundings again, her mom was holding her, her savior was explaining what she had heard and saw, while her dad was nowhere to be seen. He was holding her against the wall. I heard him say he was going to have his fun with her before he killed her. I was barely able to stop him in time, and from the look of her eyes she's definitely got a concussion from being thrown into the bricks. The other girl was saying. Momo groaned, wanna go home? Her mom nodded, holding her closer. Your uncles are sending another car. Your father went to grab the guy from the alley and take him back to the compound, so we need another car. She looked at the other girl. I would really appreciate it if you joined us and called your parents to come pick you up from our place. I don't want you out and about alone, and I know my brothers will want to thank you, as do I and my mate. The girl twirled her jack around her finger. Yeah sure. My parents own their own business a few blocks from here, so they won't be able to close up right away, but I can send them a message. It might take them a bit longer since they will have to walk, but they should be able to come get me. Namuri nodded, picking Momo up bridal style before walking towards the end of the market street. My name is Namuri. Thank you for saving Momo. Her mom smiled. The girl smiled back. I'm Kyokujiro, nice to meet you. Kinda wish it was better terms, but I'm glad I followed my gut. Namuri frowned. Your gut? Kyoka nodded. Yeah, I was actually just wandering around the market when this gut feeling hit me and I knew I was needed somewhere, so I followed it. It got stronger the closer I got to that alley, and when I turned down it and saw what was going on, the feeling ended. Namuri laughed. Oh my. I see. Well, this is great. Kyoka tilted her head to the side. Is that bad? She asked, biting her lip worriedly. Namuri shook her head. No dear. But it is something you should talk to your parents about when they arrive. What time does their business close? Kyoka shrugged. Usually around 6, but sometimes if a person pays extra, they get longer hours in the studio. They reached a car, a man stepping out of the driver's seat and opening the door for the trio. Mrs. Midnight, the bosses have Ms. Chio on standby for your arrival. The man stated. Kyoka startled, wait, you're Midnight? Namiri chuckled, yeah, I'm guessing you've heard of me? Kyoka nodded, twirling her jacks again. My mom says you and your pack have done good things around here. Her jaw dropped as a thought hit her mind. Holy shit. Momo's uncles are the Shirayamazawa men. Namiri couldn't help but laugh as the dumbfounded look crossed the girl's face. Don't worry, dear. We don't bite. You helped us so much by saving my daughter. Once they slid into the car, Namiri didn't waste any time telling the driver to step on it, and Kyoka was glad she had buckled up. Namiri fussed about her daughter who was fading in and out of focus. She smiled at the girl across from her. So, what kind of business do your parents have? Oh, they own a music store. The building is just outside the red light district but still brings in quite a few customers, so they aren't doing too badly. My grandfather left my dad the building, so they don't have to pay any rent, which is great. The studio I was talking about is in the back and has the ability for people to record their own music. Dad's a great producer. She gushed, her cheeks blushing. Namiri nodded, sounds nice. Do you play any instruments? Kyoka grinned widely, yeah. Dad and Mom both do, so they've taught me what they can. I can play pretty much anything, and sometimes I will even release stress in one of the recording rooms. Namiri clapped, that's awesome. I'm glad you have found something that makes you happy. Kyoka blushed deeper red. This woman who could frighten the strongest of alphas was actually pretty nice. She startled as the car stopped, reaching its destination. Come on, Kyoka dear. Time to meet the family. Namiri said sweetly. Kyoka froze, staring at the small group of people that had gathered outside the front door. Namiri placed her hand on Kyoka's shoulder. What's wrong, dear? Kyoka looked up at the woman. What's gonna happen next, Mrs. Midnight? She asked. Namiri sighed. First, call me Namiri. None of this Mrs. Midnight business, okay? Second, we will go in there, Momo will see the family doctor and get her wounds and concussion healed before sleeping a bit. I will introduce you to everyone and you can call your parents. You mentioned they would have to walk, so I will send a car to fetch them instead. Once they arrive, we will explain more of the situation that happened before sitting down for a nice meal. Okay? You have nothing to worry about. Kyoka took a deep breath. Oh, okay, Namiri. Thank you. Namiri smiled as she led the small girl towards the waiting group, Momo held strong in the driver's hands. As promised, Namiri sent a car to collect Kyoka's parents, who were, understandably, concerned. But once they laid eyes on their daughter, they were quick to pull her into their arms and check her over for any injuries. Namiri stepped forward. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Jiro. My name is Namiri Homingu, but most people around here call me Namiri. Your daughter was a hero today and saved my Momo from an attack. She spoke. Mrs. Jiro looked at the woman. You're Midnight, aren't you? Namiri nodded. Yes ma'am, that I am. But please, feel free to call me Namiri. I'm Mika and this is my mate, Kyotoku. Thank you. Our daughter didn't say much over the phone, so we don't really know what's all going on. Kyoka's mother said simply. Namiri nodded. Yes, well, how about we talk about it with my bosses and brothers? They are waiting for us in the lounge. She led the way through the house, opening the door for them. Shota stood up, gesturing towards the only free couch in the room. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Jiro. Kyoka's parents introduced themselves again, sitting with Kyoka in between them. Please let us begin by saying that we sincerely thank Kyoka for saving our Momo. I, myself have not heard the whole story, only bits and pieces, so, if you would be so kind, Kyoka, to explain what happened for us. Shota asked, his mates wrapping their arms around his shoulders. It was easier this time to tell everyone what had happened, Momo starting the story before Kyoka jumping in with what she had seen and heard. Her mother and father gasped at all the right moments, gripping their daughter tight. Oh Kami. That's terrible. What happened to the man? Kyotoku hissed. Hizashi leaned forward. Shoshiro here, Momo's father, brought him back to our compound for us to find out why he targeted Momo. From all accounts, he was paid to kill her, and we want to know who paid him. Mika nodded, understandable. She smiled at Kyoka. You did good, pup. Kyoka smiled sheepishly. Something else happened that Namiri said I needed to talk to you guys about since I didn't understand it. At her parents' questioning looks, she explained, I felt this feeling in my gut that got stronger as I got closer to Momo but stopped when I laid eyes on her. Mika gasped, her eyes filled with mirth. Oh, Kyo love. It's time. Kyotoku grinned, seems like it. He looked at his pup with fondness. Kyoka dear, that feeling happens when your mate is in danger. There was a brief silence as the two children processed the information. Kyoka glanced at Momo, noticing her blush. You mean, Momo is my mate? Her parents nodded. Thank God. Kyoka breathed, her shoulders releasing all the tension that had built up. Momo frowned. Huh? Kyoka laughed. I thought it was weird that I was already creating an obsession for you. Momo, I know today was scary, but honestly my first thought after getting that guy off of you was how I literally could not stop thinking about how pretty you were and how much I wanted to date you. She blushed as she rambled. Momo squeaked. Oh. She played with the hem of her shirt. I think you're pretty too. And, I'd like that. Momo's eyes widened, her head whipping around towards her parents. Mom. Mei's clothes. I forgot the bags in the alley. Shoshu chuckled, patting his daughter's head. Don't worry, dear. I grabbed the bags and brought them home. They are in the wash now. Momo smiled. Thanks, Dad. She faced Kyoka again. Mei is my new sister. Mom and Dad are adopting her. When I told you earlier about our pack mates getting attacked a few days ago, it was my cousins, Tenya and Izuku. They found Mei getting chased by some alphas from another territory, and when the alphas attacked them, Izuku fought them off but lost a lot of blood too, so he's been resting before we go on a trip. Tenya and Mei are mates too. Momo gushed, her word vomit coming out fast. Kyoka nodded, catching everything. I'm glad they are okay. Mika looked at the adults with concern. Izuku is your pup? She asked the three men. Oboro, having been silent this whole time, nodded. My mates and I just recently found Izuku and his twin Hitoshi again. Someone we trusted stole them from their cribs and took them out of the territory. We'd been looking for them for nearly 9 years and suddenly, there they were. Namuri managed to see Izuku use his quirk, which is a perfect combination of all three of ours, and ended up bringing him, Hitoshi and Hitoshi's mate, Denki, home to us. Mika gasped, oh those poor dears. She gripped her mate's hand. I don't know what we'd do if something like that had happened to Kyoka. Hizashi chirped, yeah, it was a dark moment for us, but we managed to work through it. We couldn't be more grateful that they've come home. Everyone in the room turned as someone entered. Sirs, I'd like to inform you that dinner is ready. They spoke, bowing before leaving again. The three men stood. Please, allow us to speak some more over dinner. Mika nodded. That sounds wonderful, thank you. Dinner was quick and each of them ate their fill, talking about various things before the real conversation came up. Mika, Kyotoku, my mates and I would like to properly thank your daughter for her bravery today. While I know it isn't much, please accept our thanks in the form of protection. If anything happens, either to your store, your home or even someone you know, feel free to come to us. You'll soon be family and that means more to us than money. Oboro vowed. Kyotoku inclined his head. Thank you. Our Kyoka will most likely want to visit, and as long as she is protected while traveling, we have no objections to that. We don't have much, but what we do have is our daughter, and your offer of protection is a blessing. All the adults smiled as laughter echoed around the room, coming from the children at the other end of the table. Listening in on the conversation, they chuckled along. No, but seriously. You had to have been there to see the humor. Izuku cannot cook to save his life. He tried once while we were still at the orphanage. He tried to make katsudon and ended up catching the stove on fire. He burned water. Water, Momo. How does someone burn water? Hitoshi cried. Izuku was blushing. Hey, that's not fair. You tried to make mochi once and it tasted absolutely horrible. It was gooey and had this weird liquid inside. He fired back. Kyoka, Momo and Tenya laughed as Denki took a turn. What about that time Izuku tried to reheat pizza? Izuku gasped. Hey. No fair, you guys are ganging up on me. Denki shrugged. I won't ever go against my mate, you know that Izu. Mei, in the smallest voice, spoke then. I never really tried to cook anything, but I did try to make a bow staff out of some material I found. It exploded in my face though. Tenya smiled, his fingers deftly playing with hers. That's all right, Mei. I'm sure we can learn how to cook together. It'll be a great bonding moment, I believe. Momo nodded. Actually, we all should probably learn the basics of cooking. Never know when we'd need it. The adults watched as one child after the other began to yawn. I think it's time for bed. It's been a busy day. Hizashi smiled. Mika and Kyotoku nodded, standing up. Thank you for dinner. We enjoyed it. Shota nodded. Please, allow us to offer you three a ride home? It was easy to agree, and soon enough the children had all said their goodbyes, waving as the three Jiros were shuttled away. We need to find out who has it out for the pups in our territory. Oboro growled. This is twice now one of our pups has been attacked. Shota nodded along with Hizashi. We can get our answers out of that alpha Shoshu brought back. He will be answering our questions whether he wants to or not. The trip to the Kiryaka territory was swift. Shuichi, true to his word, had made sure that everything was ready for the Shirayamazawa family's arrival. Treaties were renegotiated and signed, pack members were informed and new bonds were created. Shota, Hizashi and Oboro were shocked to find that the only pack the previous boss had allowed was their own, punishing anyone else who tried to form one that wasn't strictly blood family. They put a stop to that rule quickly. It wasn't healthy for people to not form bonds with people they felt safe with, and the previous pack had done the rest of the territory a great injustice. One thing that did come out of their meetings that they didn't expect was meeting the Todoroki pack. Tuya, his mate, Kigo, Fuyumi, Natsuo and the youngest, Shoto, had apparently been hiding within Kiryaka's borders, intent on hiding from their father. Once word got around that there were new leaders of the territory, Tuya made the decision to meet with them, bringing his small family along for the ride. "Good evening, sirs. We heard there was new management and decided to come ask for your help." Tuya began, a deep bow leaving him vulnerable. "Stand and ask, kid," came Oboro's deep voice. Tuya swallowed. "My small family and I are on the run from our father. He runs another territory towards the north. He is abusive and angers easily. He bought our mother from an Omega dealer and made her mate with him, giving him first me, then my siblings until Shoto was born. After Shoto's quirk came in, father killed our mother and began to heavily abuse Shoto, calling it training. I made the decision to take my siblings and run into another territory. We've been here for a few years, hiding. The previous boss did not know we were here, but we've heard of you three and decided to make our presence known to you." Shota frowned. "You're that Git, Endeavor's children, aren't you?" Tuya snorted. He had never heard someone call his father a Git before. "Yes, sir. We fear that he will come for us soon though and ask for your help." Shoto was only 3 when his quirk showed itself and father did not care. He ignored Natsuo and Fuyumi because he thought their quirks were weak, and once we realized my quirk was hurting me, he cast me aside as well. Hizashi leaned back in his chair. "And your mate? Is he just along for the ride?" Tuya shrugged. "He has his demons in the shape of his own father who, last we heard, was employed by some traffickers to transport Omegas and children in the black market. He came dangerously close to us a few months ago and we fear he will come back." Shota growled, the sound echoing in the near-empty room. "Endeavor is dealing with Omegas and children?" Tuya shook his head. "Not directly, sir. But before we left, he made an alliance with Overhaul, who does deal with that kind of trade." Shota nodded. "I see. I've heard of Overhaul, but I thought he only dealt drags. We will have to find more information." His mates shifted on their feet beside him. At their nods, he glanced at the red-winged teen who had been silent before addressing the rest of the small group. "You 5 should come back to our compound with us. We can protect you better there. We've had dealings in the past with Endeavor and we know that if he catches wind of where you are, he won't hesitate to storm into another person's territory to get you back." Tuya sighed with relief. "Thank you, sirs." He could feel the air shift temperatures as his youngest brother stepped forward. "Mister? I want to say thank you as well. Endeavor really scares me, and he hurt me a lot before we left. I've been having nightmares ever since Kiryaka died. I was worried he would find us and take me back." Shota cooed. "Don't worry, pup. My mates and I understand that fear. You 5 have been brave and now it is time to relax and let us take care of everything." He smiled at the two-toned boy. "You might even find friends in our children and the other pups. They are all your age." Kigo frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, but word on the streets were that your pups went missing 9 years ago." Shota nodded. "Yes, that happened. Fortunately, a few weeks ago one of our pack mates, Midnight, found them on the street and brought them home." Hizashi waved at one of the people in the room. "Shuichi? Do you have anyone who can go with them to get their things from wherever they were staying and find them rooms near ours until we leave for the compound?" The lizard man nodded. "Yes, sir." He moved the children away, stopping when Tuya called out. "Can Natsuo and Shoto stay here please? Kigo, Fuyumi and I can gather everything. I'd rather the younger 2 stay safe." The 3 men exchanged looks, ones that Tuya couldn't decipher of their meaning. Shota nodded. "Yes, that is okay. Oboro here can take them to where the other children are. Would that be okay with you?" Tuya nodded. "Thank you, sirs." He allowed Shuichi to lead them into the hallway. Oboro turned towards his 2 mates. "What are the odds that Izuku and Hitoshi adopt the peppermint pup as soon as they see him?" Shota and Hizashi laughed. "Yeah, I can see it. Izuku seems to find all the pups." Hizashi grinned. Shota nodded. "I am glad for that though. He is going to need a family he can trust like we do. Honestly, I don't know what we would do without Midnight, Snipe or Tensei. And they brought in the Hound, Vlad and Chio. We are really lucky." Oboro agreed softly. "Yeah. Well, I had better direct those 2 pups. Be back soon." He turned to Tensei and Midnight who had just walked into the room. "I'll be right back, we can discuss our next move then." Quickening his pace he left the room, finding the 5 pups still standing with Shuichi. "Thank you Tuya for trusting us. We hope to never break that trust. Tuya didn't answer, a simple nod as he turned to his younger brothers. Behave for them. We will be back later tonight, he whispered, holding Shoto's cheek. The peppermint-colored pup nodded, releasing a hint of Omegan scent. Even without it, Oboro could tell the pup was scared at being separated. Hey pup, would it make you feel better if I sent some of my own fighters with them to protect them? His words gathered confused looks from the eldest. Shoto's lips turned up slightly. Please? I already lost my mom, I don't want to lose them too. Oboro smiled. Shuichi, will you go get Tensei, Snipe and Naomasa please and have them meet us in the meeting room? The man nodded and left the 5 of them with him. Tuya looked concerned. You don't need to do that. I'm sure whoever Shuichi had would be fine. Oboro shook his head. It would make Shoto here feel better and to be honest, it would do the same for me as well. Tensei was the one who was here when the ambush happened. He watched his parents be murdered by them and nearly lost his little brother Tenya. He will protect you with everything he has because he knows what it feels like to lose family. Snipe's daughter, Momo, was nearly killed a few days ago when they were out shopping. My own pup, Izuku, nearly died protecting Tenya and Tenya's mate, Mei. You already know what happened to Izuku and Hitoshi when they were barely a year old. If there is anything Shota, Hizashi, or I know, it's how much devastation it causes when you lose even one family member. He took a deep breath. And while I might not need to send extra protection, it is something that Shoto here needs, so it will happen. Tuya bit his lip. Thank you. Again. Oboro smiled. Now, let me go introduce you guys to the rest of the pups. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to make a new friend even though they've made so many in the last 2 weeks. Kigo snorted. Kids are like that it seems. Who all have they met? Oboro laughed, scratching the back of his head. First there we had Tenya and Momo, who were the only pups in the pack. Midnight, Momo's mom, ended up bringing Izuku, Hitoshi and Hitoshi's mate, Denki, into the house where we found out that Hitoshi and Izuku were our missing pups. That was around a week and a half ago. A few days later, Izuku and Tenya saved Tenya's mate, Mei, from a rival gang that was after her. Mei's in the process of being adopted by Midnight and Snipe since we found out her parents abandoned her. A few days after that, Momo met her mate, Kyoka, whose parents are absolutely fantastic with her. And now there is you 5. Fuyumi giggled. Sounds like a lot. Her voice chimed, airy and light. Oboro hadn't heard it before and if he hadn't have seen her mouth move, he wouldn't have realized it was her speaking. Oboro exaggerated a sigh. Yeah, but they're all good kids. He stopped at a large door, opening it as he walked in. Hey pups. I've got some new friends for you guys to meet. He called out, directing all the attention to the family behind him. Shoto blinked at the scattered kids that all looked his age. He'd never had a friend before and he wanted one so badly. Father had said he didn't have time for friends and fun, but Tuya said it was something he could have if he wanted. He tensed as a girl with long black hair came up to him. Hi. I'm Momo. She offered. Shoto stared before swallowing the large amount of spit his nerves had placed in his trembling mouth. Hi. I am Shoto. His shoulders dropped as Momo smiled. Hi Shoto, do you want to play with us? We are playing a board game. Shoto glanced at the other kids behind her. They were all staring at him. Gulping he nodded. I don't know how to play though. He whispered. Momo shrugged. That's okay. We can teach you. She grabbed Shoto's hand, dragging him further into the room. Oboro chuckled as Natsuo smiled. I guess I can keep an eye on them all. I'm the eldest here after all. He followed the 2, settling down in a chair nearby. Oboro turned to the other 3. Ready to meet your guards? He asked. The 3 remaining Todorokis nodded. Let's go. Man, he couldn't wait to get back to his mates and laugh about it actually being Momo who adopted the peppermint pup. Tensei drove the group to where the Todorokis had been staying while he had a nice conversation with them. They had talked a lot about what the 3 of them wanted to do with their lives. Tuya and Kigo wanted to own a tattoo parlor, Fuyumi wanted to be a teacher. I think that will be great. Just know that you guys have my support. They arrived at the rundown building. How long have you guys been living here? It looks really rough. Tuya snorted. Yeah, it is rough. It was abandoned before we found it. The original leaders didn't really care for any of the buildings, letting them rot away or be used for the homeless. This building is one of the better ones, but it took a lot of work to even make it livable for us. Some parts are so worn down that it is downright dangerous to be anywhere nearby. We managed to place signs around warning any others about the dangers. Kigo nearly died falling through the floor once and it was only thanks to his wings that he survived. Tensei stiffened. Jesus. Okay, I'll let the bosses know. Maybe we can fix them up and turn them into better living quarters for the homeless. They did that around our territory a few years into being the leaders. We have a friend who can manipulate concrete with his quirk and another one that works with construction and demolition. They will know better than I if the building can be saved. Tuya nodded, stepping out of the car. Silently, he led the small group up the stairs, coming to the second floor. He frowned as a light shined from under one of the doors. "K. That light is coming from our place," he growled. Kigo hissed, moving quickly to the front of the group and pulling out 2 giant feathers that hardened to swords. "Stay behind us. I don't know who is in our rooms." Tensei pulled out his gun, Naomasa and Snipe following his movements. They slid closer to the door, each of them holding their breaths as they waited for whoever it was to be revealed. Kigo jumped, kicking the door open with a screech. Tuya raised his hand, holding the adults back as sounds of a tussle banged around in the room before there was absolute silence. "What the F dash?" Tuya raced into the room as Kigo cursed, the rest following close behind. Tuya stopped confused at what he was seeing. Kigo was smacking the arm of a tall, rabbit-quirked woman, her muscled form crunching in on itself as she laughed. "K? What's going on? Who is this?" Tuya questioned. Kigo sighed, laughing as he stood back up. "Tuya, this is Rumi. My best friend from my old pack." Tuya frowned. "That's nice. But how did she find you and what is she doing here?" Kigo nodded, glaring at Rumi. "Yeah, how did you find me, Rumi?" The woman stood up, dusting off her pants. "I'm a runner for various groups. Mostly small items or messages, but sometimes I guard the transport too. I was on a run for a few weeks and when I came back to see Kigo here, his father told me that he ran off. I didn't know what to think so I stayed around for a few days before leaving for another run. 2 weeks ago, I overheard that BSTRD on the phone with someone, talking about how he had found Kigo along with Endeavor's missing kids. I ended up finding out where he thought you guys were and tracked you here to warn you guys." Tuya's body began to shake, he couldn't let his father get a hold of them again. He whirled to face Tensei. "We need to pack now." He raced further into the room, stopping short when he found their bags already packed. "Rumi, did you pack for us?" he asked, facing the white-haired teen. Rumi nodded. "I figured I would find your hole and help move you guys. When I got back and noticed that you weren't here but your scents weren't all that old, I decided to pack your things while I waited for you all to return." She huffed, wasn't really expecting Kigo to come in all swordmaster and kick my butt. Kigo laughed, "And I'd do it all again if needed." He faced his mate. "Tuya, we should get moving." He sent out a few feathers to pick up the bags, settling some in everyone's hands. Rumi's eyes wandered over the rest of the group, stopping as she saw Fuyumi. "Holy shit. Hello gorgeous." Tuya growled, "Stop flirting with my sister." Fuyumi snorted, "You meet your mate and all you can say is a cheesy pickup line?" Tuya and Kigo let their jaws drop. "Well, that is certainly unexpected." Snipe muttered, knocking them out of their stupor. Tensei nodded, "I've got to agree with that, but can we do this back at the base? I want to be gone from here before Endeavor and Kigo's dad come knocking as we definitely don't have enough manpower to overcome them." Tuya nodded, pulling his sister away from the crazy rabbit woman. "Good idea." He nodded at Kigo pointedly. Catching his thoughts, Kigo turned to his friend. "Rumi, why don't you come with us? My father probably will figure out you came to warn us and I'd rather you be safe." Rumi nodded, "Probably best, I wasn't really figuring that you had someone to turn to." She smiled at the adults. "You guys look familiar but your names escape me." Tensei stepped forward. "Hello Rumi, I'm known as Ingenium but you can call me Tensei. That's Snipe and my personal guard and friend, Naomasa." He introduced them, powering through the look of slight fear on the rabbit's face. "Holy shit Kigo. Did you seriously get involved with the freaking Shirayamazawa family?" Kigo snorted, ruffling his feathers. "Rumi, they took over this territory from Kuryaka. Something happened like 2 weeks ago and they're all dead because of their stupidity. Tuya and I took a chance and told the Shirayamazawa bosses about our situation and they offered to house and protect us. The youngest 2 are still at their base where I'd like to get back to as soon as possible please, so can we go? We can answer more of your questions in the car. I'd really prefer if my mate and his siblings were safe." It was Rumi's turn for a jaw drop. Her mouth opened and shut a few times before she nodded decisively. "Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's go," she muttered, following the group down the half-broken stairs. "By the way, great security you guys have here. Nearly fell through a few floors earlier looking for your space. Your scents are FING everywhere." Fuyumi sneezed before speaking. "Yeah, that's kind of the point. We put our scents all over just in case Father or Mr. Takami found the building. If they tried to follow us strictly by scent, it would have given us time to escape. I'm glad you are okay though." Rumi shot her a sly grin. "I have a few cuts and bruises that I would love for you to kiss better." Her grin widened as Fuyumi blushed. Snipe shook his head, silently laughing as he caught the mirth on Tensei's face. I'll drive this time, Naomasa stated, holding his hands out for the keys. You guys can get to know the teens better. The bosses will probably want all the information about the opposition as soon as possible. Tensei nodded, handing the silent man the keys. Good idea. Thanks now. He hopped into the back with the rest of the group. So, your father is Mr. Takami, huh? Snipe started, his voice tilting towards concern. Kigo rolled his eyes, unfortunately. Man's a world-class abuser and doesn't really care who he abuses. Probably why Tuya and I got along so well before we realized we were mates. He huffed out a short laugh that was entirely devoid of humor. Snipe raised an eyebrow. Well, I'm glad you got away from him. He faced Tuya and Fuyumi. And you guys away from your father. I've met that flaming sheet pile and, let me tell you, I'm not impressed. Rumi cackled, flaming sheet pile. Yeah, that's funny. He watched as the rabbit scooted closer to the white-haired Todoroki, throwing her arm around the girl's shoulders. Exchanging a glance with Tuya, he had to hold back a smile at the utter look of just done the boy was showing. So, Tuya, I saw Kigo's quirk, pretty impressive if I say so myself, but I don't know yours. Tuya scowled. I have fire like Endeavor, except mine is blue and way hotter than his ever was. But that is the problem, my fire is too hot for my body to handle. If I hadn't have stopped using my quirk for a few weeks while we were running, my scars would be so much worse. As of right now, I still need to heal a bit more before even thinking about using them again. Mom had an ice quirk. I got an ice user's body but a flame quirk which is really effed up. Snipe nodded, that seems difficult. Oboro and Hizashi are really good at quirk analysis, so maybe they can find a way to help you use your quirk better so it doesn't hurt you so much. We have a doctor too, Chio, that can look at your burns and make sure they are healing properly. I know Oboro said that Shota will have friends with the others so he can do his quirk training with the rest of the pups. He smiled at the two Todorokis in front of him. Do either you or Natsuo need any quirk help? He asked Fuyumi. She shook her head. I have a weak ice quirk. I can only make it snow at best, and Natsuo. She paused, looking at her brother, unsure of her next steps. He's as good as quirkless. His quirk is a simple cold resistance. It's like as if he had a thick winter jacket on. Tuya answered with a growl. Snipe nodded, that's fine. Our pack doesn't really care about quirks. He could be completely quirkless and we wouldn't treat him any differently. Naomasa's sister is quirkless and she's one of the best chefs we've got in the territory. He offered. Naomasa spoke from the front seat. He's right. My sister is well cared for and paid extremely well for what she does. No one who matters cares about her being quirkless. Your brother won't be treated bad by the pack for his so-called weak quirk. Tuya sighed in relief. A few more minutes passed and Naomasa spoke again. We've arrived. Snipe and Tensei hopped out of the car, the teens following behind. We should introduce your friend to the bosses while you put your things away in your rooms, and then you can meet us back at the lounge with the pups. I'm sure Shoto and Natsuo will want to know you guys are safe. Tensei spoke, his hand clapping Tuya on the back. Tuya and Kigo nodded and moved to leave, but Fuyumi stayed. I'd like to come with you, please. I just found my mate and I'd rather not leave her side quite yet. She spoke simply, no trace of nerves or fear. Snipe exchanged a look with Tensei before agreeing. That's fine. It'll only be to let them know that she will be joining us and then informing them of what she knows about Takami and Endeavor. We really do need to be prepared for if they actually do come knocking. He watched as the girl's shoulders fell, glad he had said the right words to ease her mind. Tuya and Kigo smiled at Fuyumi. We will see you in the lounge, sis. They turned and left the hallway. Tensei jerked his head at Snipe. Shota texted me and said they are in the same room as earlier, but Nem is in the room with the pups. Snipe nodded. I'll go gather my mate then and meet you back there. He left without another word, leaving Tensei alone with the two women. Come on, the sooner we speak to the bosses, the sooner you two can have time to yourselves to get to know each other. It took another few days of careful planning and sending out information to all the businesses that had been previously protected by the Kiryakas. Shuichi, ever so careful and polite, had been elected by the three to be their guide for all the inner workings of the space. His friend, known by the masses as Mr. Compress, was helping him gather the information that they had asked for. Shota asked his mates a few times if they thought the compound should move to be more central to both sections of territory, but Hizashi hadn't thought it was really necessary since they were only an hour away by car or train. They had arrived back at their home late in the night, the convoy of black cars emptying out of adults with only the 7 youngest pups out cold and needing to be carried quietly through the building. Inui had spent a few hours preparing the Todoroki's new suite, having gotten permission from Tensei to move his family's things to a smaller grouping of rooms, seeing as they didn't need the extra rooms that had been their parents' bedroom and office. Tuya ushered his family away with a nod, closing the door to the rest of the adults. Rumi, or Mirko, as she was better known while running, was shown a guest room. She had made plans with the 3 Shirayamazawa men to leave in a few days with an excuse of having been away on a run. She would then grab what she had in her tiny apartment and leave with the ruse that she had another run to finish. Her neighbors and landlord knew she often came and went without word, sometimes leaving almost immediately after returning. Compress, as well as one of the younger guards, a brilliant man named Shinya, would go with her with the excuse that this particular run had her needing a partner, which was less usual but still within the realm of possibilities. The next morning found Shota and Hizashi in the dining room. Oboro had wanted to cook breakfast for his mates, something he enjoyed but didn't get to do as often as he wanted. We should let Nem and Shosher have it, that alpha who attacked Momo. They deserve to destroy that man for what he tried to do. Shota stated into his cup of coffee. Hizashi nodded. I found out when I searched his wallet that he's a cop. One not on our payroll. I will have some of our men rig something for his disappearance. Shota ran his tongue over his lips, humming with a thought. Sounds like a plan. They jerked their heads to the door as Namiri walked in, her mate at her heels. What does, she asked, sitting down at the table as Shosher moved to the kitchen to join Oboro. We were thinking of letting you and Shosher at that alpha who attacked Momo. We don't know who paid him to kill her, and I don't want whoever it was to send someone else. Hizashi stated. Namiri snarled, her face melting into a wide grin that was entirely made of pure, I'm gonna F you up, instead of anything pleasant. Shota and Hizashi grinned their own versions, dropping them when the 2 alphas stepped into the room with plates of food. Namiri and Shosher weren't what people would say vicious, but they had a clear point in their patience and understanding that warranted a simple beating, and this alpha in front of them, he had surpassed even that by attacking their pup. Not only was he going to kill her, but he had planned on having his way with her first, stopped only by an Omega girl. Namiri faced the hanging alpha, strung up by his wrists between 2 pillars. He had already been beaten a few times. Shosher had seen to that when he got to that alley. She snarled, throwing a bucket of ice-cold water on him. Wake up, she screamed. The alpha jerked awake, his one good eye wildly looking around before seeing her. She stalked up to him. Tell me what you know? Who paid you? She asked, barely holding back her formed claws. The alpha's nose twitched. I'm not telling you anything. Why do you even care anyways? Namiri tilted her head, her eyes boring into his. You will tell me who sent you soon enough. As for why I care? That girl you were going to hurt, going to kill, going to abuse, she's my PUP. She slammed an open palm into the side of his face, thrilled at the way his head snapped to the side. Now either you tell me who sent you and you die easily, or you keep it to yourself and I will make you wish you had told me sooner. But either way, you will tell me and you will die. Namiri watched as her mate walked into the room with the wheeling table full of tools and instruments. They hadn't really had much need for them, so a few had rust and even blood stains from prior sessions with other people. She held up some pliers, the blades sharp yet red-stained. I wonder if you would be more likely to tell me what I want to know if you lost your fingers. I'll be nice though and start with your nails. She placed the pliers back down, picking up a needle full of clear liquid. This should help you loosen your tongue. She walked closer to the alpha, hiding her glee when he squirmed. What the F is that? Get it away from me, he ordered. Namiri cackled, you aren't in any position to order me around. As for what this is, it's a little concoction that will heighten your pain receptors and double or even triple the amount of pain you would normally feel. She flicked the glass softly, smiling when his eyes widened. It even lasts for hours on end. She stuck the needle into his arm, plunging the thick liquid into his system. It will take a few minutes to make its way through your body, but don't worry, we can still talk while we wait. The alpha gulped, just kill me. I don't know anything about the woman. Namiri rolled her eyes, you don't have to know her name to know something about her. What does she look like? How did she contact you? What was she offering you for the job? Little things like that are answers that are acceptable to me. The alpha shook his head, I'm not telling you anything. Namiri shrugged, you will be dead either way. It'll just be better and smoother for you if you talk first. She grinned as the man's eyes blew, his pupils growing larger as the drag took effect. She faced her mate who had been silent in the room. It's time. He came closer to them then, kissing her on the cheek before whirling and slamming his fist into the man's stomach. Tell us what she looked like, Namiri roared. The man shook his head again but kept silent. This is going to only hurt more the longer you refuse, she offered. Shosher popped his knuckles and punched again, this time in the face. What did she say to you? She asked a different question that time, she didn't want to get stuck on just one question he didn't answer. Again, the alpha shook his head. This will be fun then. She nodded to her mate. Let's continue. It was only a few hours later that the alpha cracked, finally answering questions that Namuri asked. After she was done, she thanked the alpha and nodded to Shoshu before leaving the room, not even jumping when a loud gunshot echoed through the space. She moved to her suites, jumping in the shower and thrilled when her mate joined her. That was fun. We haven't had a date day in a while. Shoshu spoke, nuzzling her neck. She ummed, tilting her head to the side and allowing him better access. I agree, we will definitely have to do that again. She turned to face him, hot water cascading down her back. We need to tell the bosses what we found out. Shoshu hummed, yes, but we can do that after we shower. The pups are safe and it's not like the information we got is going to change within the next few hours. He grinned at her, releasing some pheromones. I have an itch that only my beautiful and perfect mate can scratch. Namuri laughed, throwing her head back. That, I can do. The door opened behind Izuku, but he was too entranced in what he was watching to even notice. Oboro watched his son stare at the computer screen, watching the various people within the territory use their quirks. He stepped closer, hearing the mumbling that his son was saying. If he hadn't been used to Hizashi and his high-speed mumbles, Oboro would never have been able to understand the words pouring out of Izuku's mouth. Seems like some sort of gravity manipulation, the beams don't float past a certain point. Wonder if she could make things heavier too. Izuku wondered, writing down his thoughts. Oboro watched as the boy focused on another person, this one walking what looked like her siblings to the nearest park, her tongue wrapped around one of them. He could hear Izuku mentioning something about paralytic mucus that the girl might be able to make, and Oboro agreed at the possibilities as the girl had a frog mutation. He watched for a few more minutes before clearing his throat. Hey kiddo, what are you doing in here? Izuku jumped and spun around, his eyes wide. Oh. You scared me. I didn't hear you come in. He looked about the small office. Am I not allowed to be in here? Oboro shook his head. You are fine, I was just curious as to what you were doing. I heard a few of your mumbles, that was some great analysis. He smiled, sitting down next to his pup. The wildness of Izuku's hair had gotten longer with the time he had been there, healthier too as the boy was able to rest and eat properly. He placed his hand in Izuku's hair. Wanna walk me through your thoughts? Izuku bit his bottom lip. I mean, it's not really that great. I know it's creepy, but quirks are just so awesome that I've always wanted to know more about them. Oboro frowned. It's not creepy, it's useful. And from what little I heard, you really know your stuff. Zashi and I both tinker with quirk analysis ourselves, but you seem to be much better at it. I'd be curious what you could teach us about our own quirks. Izuku snorted, pulling a notebook closer to his chest. I've already done your quirks as well as Auntie Nem's and Uncle Shoshi's. Tenten thinks that I am crazy now because I helped him figure out that the different kinds of orange juice does different things with his quirk, and Momo swears that I've broken her mind. Oboro laughed. What did you tell her about her quirk? Izuku smiled sheepishly. She always thought that her quirk was turning lipids into the things she makes, but that doesn't make sense. So I did a test where we weighed her before she made a bunch of things and then weighed her again. Her weight didn't change. It would have if she was actually using lipids. Since she's not, that means she's actually using the energy that eating foods creates. Oboro's eyes widened. DMN kiddo. That does make sense. He ruffled his son's hair, beaming. You are very smart. He then leaned back in his chair, folding his fingers and ankles. So what got you into doing quirk analysis anyways? Izuku flushed at the praise. He shrugged and danced around in his seat before answering. I've always done it, even before my quirk came. Quirks have always been interesting to me, and it was something that I could keep to myself with once it did manifest. Toshi and I, before our quirks showed up, we weren't liked, but we were tolerated at most. I told you guys about the other kids, the ones that were older than us had what some would call good quirks. But then Toshi's quirk came and suddenly we were not even worth the attention. Them talking to us dwindled from everyone to none of them by the time mine came in a few months later. Toshi and I got in a lot of fights during that time, either because the others called him a villain or because they thought I would be quirkless since I didn't get my quirk at the same time as my own twin. After I got it, the only person who would even be in the room alone with us was Mizutomi, and when she died, we had no one. The older kids aged out or were adopted, and while that would have helped us get along with some of the younger ones, Mizutomi's son was cruel and despised us to the point of punishing the other kids if he saw them even talking to us. We chose to spend a lot of time out of the building after that, not that anyone cared where we were. Oboro closed his eyes. His sons had been hurt and abused by someone they should have been able to trust, all because of their quirks. He knew the world wasn't fair, his own childhood could show that, but he still hoped that his own pups could be spared the pain he and his mates had gone through. If that beach hadn't have taken them, they would have been. He opened his eyes at the feeling of a hand on his arm. It's okay. We escaped and survived. We didn't break, and yeah, while it was lonely, at least Toshi and I had each other. Izuku offered, a small smile on his face. Oboro nodded. Yeah, I know. I'm thankful for that, but it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have been kidnapped. I always promised myself that my own pups would never have to feel any discrimination, and that plan has failed. Izuku sighed. It wasn't your fault. You trusted them and they betrayed you. He bit his lip again. Who was she? You guys never told us who. Oboro nodded. We hoped for a while that she was dead, but that doesn't make much sense. Her name was Emi Fukakato. She's an alpha who was always touchy with Shota, trying to always make him laugh with and without her quirk. We don't know why she decided to take you and your brother that night, but we are extremely thankful she dropped you both off at an orphanage instead of just simply killing you too. Izuku hummed. Same. But that brings up the weird point. Why did she leave us at an orphanage together and with our first names being the same? If she wanted to hide us, she should have separated Toshi and I and maybe even changed our names. Oboro was silent. He hadn't thought about that before, just happy to see his pups again. But Izuku was right, it didn't make sense. That is a good point. Maybe she wanted to be able to find you both again if her plans changed for whatever reason, or if she needed leverage. Izuku shrugged. Maybe, but we may never know. They both turned at a knock on the door, which opened to reveal Hizashi. Hey guys. I was just looking for you both. What ya doin'? He asked, sitting in an open chair. Oboro smiled at his mate. Izuku and I were just talking about quirk analysis. Turns out he got our talents for it, then surpassed even that. Kid so fing smart. He huffed happily as his pup blushed deep red. It's not that good. Just something I do for fun. Hizashi laughed. Sounds awesome, kiddo. You got anything on my quirk? Izuku perked up, metaphorical tail wagging. Yeah. So, I know your quirk is called voice, but not many people know it's your actual voice. Which means you constantly have to control it even when simply speaking. You probably could also use your quirk at either a high pitch, high enough that people's insides could burst without them actually hearing anything, or even use it like echolocation. I wonder if you resonate your voice at the proper pitches, could you even invoke feeling of happiness or depression? Oboro grinned at his blonde mate whose mouth was open with shock. His pup was a fing genius and didn't even know it. Hizashi laughed, startling Izuku out of his fast-paced thinking. We are going to have to try those things. I haven't thought about it before. Great ideas. Kami, he loved that man. Zashi knew just what to say to praise someone without being too much. Izuku gasped, startling the two men. Aizu, kiddo, you okay? Hizashi asked. Izuku nodded. I just realized something. What if the reason Tuya's fire burns him is because he's using hot flames? Oboro and Hizashi exchanged confused looks. What do you mean, pup? Oboro questioned. Izuku nodded. What if he's supposed to use flames that are ice cold instead of burning hot? Hizashi hissed. That might be something to see if he can do. I could see the flaming trash can thinking his eldest son's quirk was like his but stronger. Izuku smiled brightly, leaving his dads to blink away the sun. I've gotta go tell him, he yelled, jumping out of his chair and out of the room. Hizashi and Oboro laughed. He's just like us when it comes to quirks. Hizashi said. Oboro chuckled. Yeah, but he's definitely smarter than us. Gets his brains from show. Hizashi gasped, pretending to be offended. Excuse you. I'm smart too. He rolled his eyes before continuing. Okay, fair. We should probably go make sure he's not trying to torture the poor alpha with his questions. Oboro stood, offering his mate a hand. We could, or we could go find Sho and have a bit of fun. Hizashi's eyes widened. Tuya will be fine. I also wanted to add a map I spent hours making, but I don't know how. Please help? Shota sighed. I promise you. We will be fine. We are going with the fighters, we will be together and not separate, and we won't even be leaving the territory. He reassured the two again. They had been growing more and more protective over him, either sticking close to his side or choosing to forego hanging out with the other pups in favor of spending time with him. And while he was glad that his sons were happy to be around him, he was concerned that they were taking things too far. But we don't want to lose any of you. We finally know what it's like to have a family, and now you are all going off to fight. Izuku whimpered, nuzzling softly into his chest. Hitoshi stood on his other side, arms wrapped around both Shota and Izuku. Yeah, Izuku is right. We are just worried. Hitoshi agreed. Shota sighed again, opening his mouth to say something else when the doors opened and Namiri walked in. She had barely made it a few steps away from the trio when both boys turned and hissed at her, scaring her back a few steps. Shota and Namiri stared at them, watching silently as they both froze. Kami. I'm so sorry Auntie Nem. I have no idea why we did that. Izuku was horrified. Why was he acting so protective? Hitoshi stayed silent for a moment. Izu, we should go to our rooms. They need to prepare. He whispered as he dragged his twin away from the adults. Namiri frowned. What was that all about? Shoyuta shrugged. I have no idea, but they've been rather clingy and protective these last few days. Namiri nodded. I've noticed that. And you don't have any clue as to why? Shota shook his head. No, and it's worrying me. He sighed and glanced at his watch. Come on, we'd better gather the others. Shota, Hizashi and Oboro each led different teams in the raid against the Poltia crew. News had come in 2 weeks prior that the group had been attempting to sell drags and women in their territory for a few weeks and had hands in Omega trading as well. Normally, the 3 bosses would have simply run them out of their territory, but as it turns out, the men who attacked Izuku both times as well as the ones chasing Mei had been part of their crew. And that would not fly with the 3 Shirayamazawa men. Shota's team was in charge of first attack, working together to remove the heavy hitters and such. Hizashi's team was second, hitting the crew afterwards to permanently down any who escaped Shota's group, while Oboro's team was in charge of clean-up and ally removal. The 3 teams hit hard and hit fast, tearing through the Poltia crew's fighters, cleaning them out of their small warehouse on the edge of the territory before meeting up again in the large main room. As promised, they didn't leave each other's sights, staying in the same room during the whole fight. We should search every nook and cranny to make sure we got them all. Hizashi growled, wiping splattered blood from his face. Oboro nodded, watching with concern as Shota looked away from the splatters covering the 2 men. Sho? Are you feeling okay? You're looking a bit green there, love. Hizashi and Oboro looked closer at their Omega. Shota waved, I'm fine, just tired. Oboro opened his mouth to ask a question when his phone rang. What's up, Naomasa? He answered, the phone on speaker. The beta's voice came through, we found something you 3 are going to want to see. Oboro exchanged looks with his mates. Where are you? Naomasa could be heard speaking to someone, probably Tensei, before his voice became clearer. Go towards the back of the main room near the hallway. In the kitchen there's a doorway that looks like a pantry but it's actually stairs leading down. The 3 men followed his directions, climbing down the dark stairs into a brightly lit basement. The basement had walls that didn't reach the top of the ceiling, forming rooms that flowed down a white hallway. The concrete floor was clean and even looked new, unlike the rest of the warehouse floors. Naomasa stood at the entrance to the hallway. We found a few rooms with what looks like research materials and another few doors that are locked. Tensei said to get you 3 down here before we open the locked ones just in case. He explained. Shota nodded, that is probably best. Have you unlocked any yet? Naomasa nodded towards the first door on the left. This one is the only one left to unlock. It has 3 locks on it, which kind seems like overkill, and Tensei says there's a weird milky pup scent coming from the door but not any of the walls. Shota stared. Milky pup scent here? He sniffed the door, finding what the beta was saying. Yeah, that's a pup scent all right. Fresh too and mixed with an adult scent. Tensei came out of another room, walking steadily towards the group. This is the only one left for me to unlock. We can go through that one first and leave the others for the rest of the men to go through since this one was the only one with so many locks on it. Shota took a deep breath before nodding, stepping aside to give Tensei room to pick the locks on the door. The man was fast, having the first 2 popped open in less than 2 minutes, but the third one was giving him trouble. Son of a beach. Why the F is this lock so stubborn? Tensei cursed. Shota turned as Hizashi laughed. Should we just break it? Tensei's shoulders dropped. Yeah, fine. This is gonna end up being our warehouse anyways and I can always just change the locks. He stood, moving away from the door. Oboro stepped forward, rolling his shoulders before kicking hard at the door, smashing it inward. Shota could feel himself grow wet at the sight, and from the way his 2 mates whipped their heads to stare at him, they could smell it too. Hizashi shimmied up to Shota, a sly grin on his face. Does our kitten like seeing Burrow be strong? He purred in the Omega's ear. Shota whined, a slight shiver shaking his body. Oboro growled, we can finish these later, loves, but for now we need to concentrate on what we are doing. Especially with a small unconscious pup in this room. Shota and Hizashi froze, staring past Oboro to see the small black-haired boy strapped down to the table, various tools and devices surrounding his too small form. They entered the room, Oboro placing his fingers against the kid's throat. He has a pulse. It's steady but light. He needs to get to Chio as soon as possible. Tensei and Naomasa pushed forward, both going to work on releasing the boy from the table. Naomasa picked him up, grunting. He's too light, probably malnutrition and such, not sure what she will be able to do. Tensei nodded, we can take him back to base while you guys finish up here. I've already checked all the rooms for anything suspicious, but other than a sheet ton of drags and files, I didn't find anything. Hizashi jerked his head. That's fine. Thanks, Ten. We'll see you back at the compound. Keep us informed please. Shota watched as the two left before facing his mates. We should finish this up quickly. Oboro smirked, why is that kitten? You have a need? He teased. Shota growled, don't start or we'll never get done. He huffed, leaving the room. Walking into another room, Shota jerked to a stop as a scent overwhelmed him, making him run out again. Finding the nearest trash can, he promptly emptied his stomach of everything inside, barely able to react when one of his mates rubbed his back and the other held his long hair. Finally, it was over, and he stood straight again. He ran through everything that had happened in the last few weeks, his face flushing. He swore, his eyes wild. He took the bottle of water Oboro was holding out to him, swishing it around his mouth before spitting into the trash and swallowing the next gulp. You okay, Sho? Hizashi asked, concern lacing his words. Shota nodded, yeah, just the smell in that room hit me hard. I'll probably let you guys deal with it instead. His mates exchanged looks. Shota knew that they could tell he was hiding something, but thankfully neither decided to press the issue. He wanted to be sure first before telling them his thoughts. Oboro tilted his head, let's get this done then. I'd rather you not get sick again while we aren't at home where I can care for you better. Shota nodded, a small smile sliding into his features. Sounds good. Hanta woke up, his heart quickening its pace as he glanced around the room. He wasn't where he had been the last few weeks, the room reminding him more of a hotel room than a hospital room. He sat up in the bed, his head whipping to the side at the sound of someone's clothes shuffling. Sitting next to him was a tall brown-haired man, his button-up white shirt wrinkled from the slouching position of falling asleep in a chair. Hanta studied the man, nearly missing how the man had a tan coat laid across his lap but definitely not missing the two handguns strapped to each side of his torso, each in easy access for a quick draw. Hanta looked away from the man to search the rest of the room. Even though he had just woken up, he already knew that he wasn't in that warehouse anymore. The walls reached the ceiling and the smells that surrounded him were clean but not sterile in any way. A door across the room was open and let him see a bathroom inside. Hanta's eyes flicked back over to his visitor, watching the sleeping form as he threw the covers off of him, slipping quietly out of the bed to pad over to the bathroom, softly closing the door with a click of the lock. Hanta finished using the bathroom quickly before catching sight of himself in the mirror above the vanity. He winced at the way his hair hung limply around his shoulders, the normally short black strands that used to shine healthily now having a gross oily sheen to them. He growled, stripping off the clothes he had woken up in and turning on the shower. He scrubbed hard, leaving his pale skin red. He stood under the stream, staring at his arms and the scars they sported, desperately trying to not remember how he got each and every one of them. It wasn't until the water ran cold that Hanta climbed out of the shower again, drying off and getting dressed back in the clothes he had woken up in. He was slightly concerned that someone had changed his clothes while he was out cold, but anything was better than the literal rags those assholes who tortured him had kept him in. He opened the door, squeaking as he noticed the man was now awake and had been joined by 4 other men, each of them sitting at a table that had been brought in and was covered in food. Hello, pup. It's good to see you awake. How about you join us for lunch, and we get to know each other? The original man offered softly. Hanta shook, nerves enveloping his senses. Don't worry, kiddo, we won't bite. Another man, this one tall and blonde, said. Hanta watched as the remaining 3 nodded their agreement, slowly stepping into the room. Where am I? He asked, surprised when his voice didn't shake. The tall light blue-haired man answered him. You are at our home. Yesterday, my mates and I went with the rest of our pack to the warehouse where we found a bunch of people who were trying to do things they shouldn't be on our territory. After we cleaned house, we searched the building where we found you. Naomasa here helped bring you back and cleaned you up a bit before keeping watch for when you woke up. Hanta glanced at the man who had been sleeping in the chair. We can discuss more later, I'm sure you're hungry, pup. Come on over and eat first. The medium black-haired man said. Hanta, not wanting to be rude, obeyed, settling in the open chair next to the man he knew as Naomasa. The food looked great, his plate swiftly filled with eggs, bacon and toast. Hizashi likes to cook Western-style breakfast sometimes, but we know not everyone likes that kind of food, so let us know if you want something else. The black-haired man whispered, laughing when the blonde who had spoken earlier shouted a scandalized, hey. Hanta shrugged, my mom used to cook stuff like this when I was younger. I missed it. He felt tears prick his eyes and hurried to wipe them away. Hey pup, where are your parents? The black-haired one asked. Hanta sighed. Mom and Dad died a few years ago. They were driving home after date night and a drunk driver hit their car, making it flip a few times. By the time responders got there, Dad was gone, and Mom didn't make the trip to the hospital. He took a bite of toast, swallowing it before finishing. I was at home with the babysitter when we got the news. He took another bite. Mom and Dad didn't have any other family that could care for me, so I got put in the system. The table was silent. But it's okay. I mean, I miss them, but my neighbor was nice enough to help me keep some of their stuff for when I found a family. Like photos and jewelry and such. He stated. The one named Naomasa put more eggs on his plate as he finished off the first batch. That's nice of them. Hanta nodded, putting down his fork. So, I've figured out that the tall blonde is Hizashi and the one caught sleeping on the job is Naomasa, but who are you other guys? The black-haired one snorted. He's got you there now. You were sleeping when he snuck off to the bathroom. He teased before directing his attention to Hanta. I'm Shota, the tall, pale blue-haired one is Oboro. Hizashi and Oboro are my mates. The other one with dark blue hair is Tensei. Hanta smiled. Nice to meet you all, I'm Hanta Zero. The men at the table nod, saying their hellos before silence fell again as everyone continued to eat. Hanta ended up being the last one still eating in the end, but he didn't feel rushed to finish. Once he had eaten his fill, he sat back in his chair, waiting for someone to speak. He didn't have to wait long before Oboro spoke. So, why don't you tell us how you ended up strapped to a table in a warehouse? It was worded as a question, but Hanta knew he meant anything but. Hanta frowned. I told you guys earlier how I ended up in the system. I found myself in an orphanage waiting for someone to show interest in either fostering me or outright adopting. A few people showed interest, but I denied each of them when I realized they only cared that I was an alpha. I don't want anyone who only cares about my gender and not me specifically. The workers always thought I would end up aging out with that attitude, and honestly, I did too. So, imagine my surprise when I met this lady while out on a walk who didn't care that I was an alpha. She didn't care that my quirk is simply shooting tape out of my elbows. She listened when I talked about my likes and dislikes, she laughed at my stupid jokes and even remembered my birthday. After a few months, she showed up at the orphanage and offered to foster me. I thought it was a dream come true. She was so nice and funny. She never treated me badly or even got mad at me. His nose twitched at the memory. I thought I would be able to finally get my things from my old neighbor and had made plans to introduce her to them when we went in a few days, but then one night she was acting odd. She was silent and didn't laugh at any of my jokes. She barely looked at me while she cooked, and even dinner was bland. The last thing I remember from that night was eating a few bites of my food before I grew sleepy. It wasn't until I woke up the next morning strapped to a chair that I realized she had drugged my food. Hanta took a deep breath. The doctors I saw next informed me that she had given me to them, that she never cared about me. Naomasa laid a hand on Hanta's shoulders. That's terrible. If it makes you feel better, you won't ever have to worry about them again. You're safe here. Hanta smiled. Thanks. Anyways, I wasn't really able to keep track of days, so I'm not sure how long they tested their demented sheet on me. Shota chuckled. It's the first week of May, if that helps. Hanta nodded. Yeah, it does. Means they had me about 3 months. Naomasa hissed. DMN. I'm sorry we couldn't rescue you sooner, Hanta. He waved off the apology. Don't worry about it. You didn't know I was there and I can't blame you for that. He frowned as he remembered something, his head jerking around to stare at Oboro. Wait, you said, your territory, da. Oboro laughed. Yes, me and my mates are the bosses around here. It's an open secret that we are a Mafia family. Hanta squinted. Which family? Hizashi chuckled. The Shirayamazawa family. Hanta closed his eyes. Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Tensei, who had been silently watching, raised an eyebrow. Is that a bad thing? Hanta shook his head. Nope. Just glad it was you guys and not some other group. I used to hear stories about you guys while I was in the orphanage. It was because of your alliance with other families that Omegas and children were safer. Shota grinned. That's great to hear. We worked hard to make sure that happens, and hopefully we can make it like that across the country, but it's slow going for now. Hanta nodded. Yeah, that's fair. Naomasa clapped him on the back. So, speaking of thing being safer, I would really like to hear the name of the woman who betrayed your trust so I can find her and ask why she did it. Hanta snorted. Yeah, well, when you do, make sure to bring me along so I can ask her about some things myself. Naomasa smiled. Sounds like a plan. Hanta bit his lip. She never really told me her name. I only know it because it was on my foster paperwork. I thought it was odd she didn't tell me, but she had originally introduced herself by what she called her stage name, so I thought she had simply forgotten. Anyways, the paperwork stated that her name was Emi Fukakato. Hanta froze as pheromones flooded the room. glancing up to find the 3 Shirayamazawa men gripping the table hard with anger. He backed away from the table, running into the bathroom and locking it. His heart began to beat faster, pounding in his chest. He couldn't breathe. Hanta panicked as his thoughts ravaged his mind. What did he do wrong? Are they going to send him back? Why did her name make them mad? He was so scared, not noticing when the door opened and revealed Tensei on his knees in front of it. He didn't see Naomasa rushing into the room to sit at his side. Hanta didn't hear the words coming from the man's mouth. He jerked sharply as someone touched his hand, his vision blackening around the edges before passing out. Hanta awoke for the second time that day under layers of blankets on the bed. He kept his eyes closed as voices raged from the other side of the room. You guys made him suffer a panic attack. He's a scared pup and you scared him more. He could hear Naomasa yell. The soft-spoken voice that answered was easily deciphered as Shota's. I know and we are sorry. We didn't mean to scare him, we just didn't expect for that beach to be so close to our territory and to find out that we never knew. Hizashi spoke next. I feel bad we scared the kid. Usually, we are better about keeping control of our sense, but it was still no excuse. When he wakes up again, we'll apologize properly. Hanta could hear Naomasa huff. I just wish I could have stopped his panic attack. Hanta has dealt with enough in his young life, I never wanted to add to it. He had to stop himself from jumping as a hand carted through his hair. You gonna ask him? Oboro asked. Naomasa squawked, what do you mean? Oboro laughed, you've pretty much claimed the pup as yours. Betas can get parental urges too, you know. Naomasa was silent as he continued to play with Hanta's hair. Is it that obvious? There was a brief pause before the man cursed, I don't know guys. I just want to give him what he deserves but that beach broke his trust. I just don't know if he would want that. Hanta chose that moment to shift, pretending to come out of his sleep. Naomasa smiled down at him. Hey kiddo. Sorry we scared you. The guys just lost control of their anger at Emmy for some stuff she did to them years ago. They didn't mean to scare you. Hanta froze as Oboro coughed, yes. We are sorry Hanta. Please forgive us. Hanta nodded, what did she do? Shota sighed, 9 years ago she kidnapped our twins from their bed a few months after they were born and left the territory with them. They are home now after all these years, but we still have no idea why she did that to us when we trusted her. Hanta hissed, seems like her MO. She gets someone to trust her then breaks it. Naomasa laughed, returning his hand to ruffle Hanta's hair. Yeah, she does seem to do that a lot doesn't she? Anyways, you're safe here with us, she won't ever hurt you again. If you want, I can show you to your rooms where you'll be staying. Hanta nodded, getting up from the bed with a bit of help. That sounds nice. Once given permission by Chiyo to start using his quirk again, Tuya wasted no time in getting Izuku to help him figure out his quirk. Turns out, he was right. Tuya could use both hot flames that could melt the strongest of metals as well as cold flames that froze whatever they touched. He still had to be careful not to overuse one end or the other, but now he didn't burn his skin and could use his quirk whenever he needed without fear. Izuku and Tuya were practicing in one of the gyms when Shota walked in. Hey Tuya? How long have you been in the gym? He asked the tall white-haired alpha. Tuya frowned, at least an hour, why? Shota hummed, someone called in a report to us that blue flames were burning something on the beach. I just wanted to check to see if it had been you, but if you were here then it wasn't, which means we have someone else in the territory that can produce blue flames. He sighed, it's weird though. We've been getting reports from businesses we protect that quirks are being used nearby, yet when we go and speak to the person whose quirk it is, they all have alibis that show they were nowhere nearby. Izuku frowned, maybe a copy quirk? Shota nodded, that's what Burrow and Zashi think. We're sending Ken later to ask around and see if he hears anything new. He smiled at the two boys. You guys should probably stop for now. You don't want to get too tired and overwork yourselves. Izuku sighed, you're probably right. See you later Tuya, we can always finish this later. Izuku walked out of the gym, leaving Tuya and Shota alone. The green bean scares me sometimes. He's so young and yet so old at the same time. Tuya spoke, his voice soft and even. Shota sighed, yeah, that's what happens when you live on the streets for a month or two. He might not have been the alpha in his traveling group, but he was still elected leader and therefore had to learn quickly. My mates and I have been trying to figure out how to get him to act more like a kid again, which being around the other pups is helping somewhat, but it's going slow. He smiled softly, I can't wait for the day he feels safe enough to call us his dads. Tuya chuckled, yeah I can understand that. He cracked his neck to each side, do you guys have a rut or heat specific room? Kei's getting close to his heat. And I have my rut and I don't want my siblings to see us like that. Usually, it's one or the other. This will be the first time we've had them both at the same time. Shota nodded. Yeah, we do. They're mainly for families with young kids or when the pups get their first waves, but we keep them well stocked with food and drinks as well as blankets and such. I can throw you both in one of the ones that has an attached bathroom if you want. Tuya nodded. That would be appreciated, thanks. Fuyumi and Natsuo know it's coming, so they'll be able to help with the younger pups while we are gone. Fuyumi's heat is in another month, but sometimes it hits early, so we've been keeping watch for it. Shota jerked his head. Is Rumi going to join her during her heat? I know they just met, but I've seen it happen before. Tuya shook his head. No. They decided to wait a bit longer to get to know one another better. Shota hummed. Sounds good. We will keep watch on her also, just in case it happens when you're not around. How long do you have until it hits you and Kigo? Tuya was silent as he thought. Probably another 2 days or so. Shota hummed. Okay then, feel free to find me tomorrow and I will show you where it is. You can go ahead and get in it if you both want. We have others and none of our other packmates needs it anytime soon. Tuya sighed with relief. Thanks, boss. We'll let you know. He took a whiff. DMN, I stink. I should go shower. Talk to you tomorrow? He hurried out the door, Shota not too long behind him. Ken Sekijiro didn't mind walking around town and talking to the people who lived there. It was nice meeting new people and seeing new things as well as old friends. He hadn't even been bothered when a small blonde pup ran past him, accidentally bumping into him. While speaking to one of the jewelry store owners that had seen someone using a quirk that belonged to someone else, Ken paused at the flash of blonde out of the corner of his eye. He turned around, looking for it again. Did you see something, Vlad, sir? The store owner asked. Ken nodded, eyes still searching out the large windows. Thought I saw a flash of something. He sighed. Excuse me while I check. He left the store quickly, turning to the left just in time to see a blonde pup use a quirk that he knew was not theirs. There weren't any people in the territory that used a quirk like his, but here they were, using blood spears to hook some meat off of a food cart. He frowned, watching as the boy walked away with his stolen goods before following him, slipping a bit of cash onto the cart. The pup didn't look back to see if he was being followed, which made it easier for Ken to shadow him all the way into a small, dark alley. Ken was silent as he got closer, hearing voices from behind the dumpster. I got us some meat, Coco. I know it's not raw, but it will keep us from getting sick like last time. He heard the boy say. A girl, probably Coco, spoke next. Thanks, NEI. I know you're trying to keep us safe, but I'm older, I should be the one protecting us. The boy, Ken now knew as NEI, spoke again. But Coco, you're growing weaker the longer you go without blood. You can barely walk anymore. I mean, I've been giving you my blood, which helps, but I can't give you enough to make you strong. Ken heard a sigh. I know, NEI. You've been the best little brother a girl could have, but I still feel bad. Dad wanted to keep you, but you wanted to stay with me when he kicked me out. I feel like I failed you. He heard a harsh cough. NEI, I'm scared. I don't want to die and leave you alone. She whispered. The boy hissed, You're not gonna die, Coco, I won't let you. Ken stepped around the dumpster, spooking the two pups. How about you both come with me so I can help you instead? He watched as the girl, Coco, attempted to throw her brother behind her. She was blonde as well, her hair ratted and in messy space buns. Her yellow eyes were surrounded by dark shadows and her face was gaunt from malnutrition. She hissed at him, showing off her fangs. Who are you? She growled. Ken raised his eyebrow. Someone who can actually help. The boy drew his attention next. He was still standing, his fists raised in preparation. He wasn't in as bad of shape as his sister, but it was still not pleasant. His blonde hair was long, nearly touching his shoulders, greasy and in his face, almost hiding ice blue eyes filled with fear. Why would you help us? You don't know anything about us. Ken hummed softly. That's true. But I like to think that I am a good person, and I cannot stand aside and watch as two pups like yourselves stay on the streets while there is something I can do about it. Besides, as you've already figured out, my quirk has to do with blood, and if anyone would know what it's like to have a blood-based quirk like your sister here, it'll be me. He remained silent as the two pups exchanged looks, using that time to look over them better. The girl had stains on her clothes, the hoodie, once pale pink, now a dingy reddish-brown, while her pants were more holes than cloth. Her nails were dirt-crusted and broken, and from what he could see of the natural color of them, he knew she was really sick. The boy definitely was better off, his gaunt features a simple fix alone with basic hygiene and good food. His clothes consisted of another hoodie, one that was probably blue originally and now looked like it was mud brown, as well as cargo pants that were missing most of the pockets. He smiled softly at the two. How about I take you both to my home, you can rest, eat and get a basic health checkup, and if you decide to leave, well, I won't stop you. Ken watched as the boy snarled, Why should we trust you? You could be out to hurt us more. He shrugged, I don't hurt pups, but I know you won't trust my word alone. He sighed, do you know of the Mafia family that owns this territory? The girl froze, yes. Storm, Screech and Eraserhead are famous around the dark side of the law for keeping their territory as well as their allies' territories safe from Omega and children dealers. One of the reasons we came here. Ken nodded, sighing in relief. They are my bosses and leaders of the pack I am in. I can have them there with us if it makes you feel safer. The boy stared at the girl, couldn't hurt right? We need help that we obviously won't get here on the streets and he's right, if anyone would understand your quirk, it'll be him. The boy pleaded. The girl pushed against the wall, her knees unsteady as they were forced under her tiny form. My quirk is called Transform. When I drink someone's blood, I can turn into them and use their quirks. Nito here has a copy quirk. He can touch someone with all 5 fingers and either choose to use the quirk right then or he can put it in what we call stasis mode and save it for later use. As long as he doesn't use it his timer doesn't run out. She stared at him, watching him for any disgust or regret. Ken nodded, those are interesting quirks. Powerful too, but that doesn't really matter to me or my pack. One of my packmates is quirkless and her brother can only tell when someone is lying or telling the truth. One of the pups in our pack, her eyes only zoom in or out. You won't catch hate for your quirks. He held out his hand for a shake. I'm Ken Sekijiro but most call me Vlad King. I'm also an alpha. May I know your names? The boy glared at him until his sister nudged him. Don't be rude. She admonished. That's Nito, I'm Himiko. Ken smiled, nice to meet you both. Himiko, would you be okay if I carried you? I'm sure you are a tough pup, but I'd feel better if you didn't fall trying to walk with how weak your body is. He waited patiently for her approval before gently picking the girl up in his arms. I have a car down the street that can take us back to the compound quicker. Our pack doctor, Chio, can look over the both of you better than anything I could do. Once we get to the car, I will call my bosses to meet us in Chio's office. My packmate, the quirkless one, is a great chef so I'm sure she can whip you guys up some food. He could tell he was rambling, but he was also relieved that it was helping the children relax as they walked. How old are the two of you? He asked suddenly. Himiko tensed in his arms. I'm 11, Nay's 9. Vlad hummed, that's cool. You both are around the ages of the other pups in the pack so you shouldn't have any trouble making friends with them, they are very nice kids. Himiko giggled weakly, sounds nice. We haven't had friends in so long. Can you tell us about them? Ken chuckled, well, there's Izuku and Hitoshi, the twins, who are the boss pups. Tenya and Momo who are the boss brother and sister's children, although Tenya is actually Tensei's little brother, but their parents died a few weeks ago leaving Tensei in charge of Tenya. Mei, Tenya's mate, just got adopted by Momo's mom and dad. Denki is Hitoshi's mate, he's not been adopted by anyone, but the bosses keep him cared for. Momo's mate, Kyoka, is around quite often. Her parents own this nice little music store near the red light district so she's over quite a bit when there's no school. We just added some other kids to the pack, but I need to be in the car to tell you both about them since we are trying to hide them from some people, and I don't want those people to find out. Himiko and Nito nodded, staying silent until the trio were nestled in the car and on their way to the compound, waiting for him to finish his phone call to the Shirayamazawa men. Okay, now I can tell you. Have you both heard of Endeavor? At their nods he frowned, well his children ran away from him and asked for our help keeping them safe. Turns out Endeavor is severely abusive, so they all ran. There's the eldest, Tuya, and his mate, Kigo, who are both Fuyumi is 16 and her mate, Rumi, is then Natsuo is next and he's 12 before finally coming to Shoto whose we just found out that another pup we rescued from an Omega dealer is Shoto's mate. His name is Hanta and he's 9 as well. Nito coughed, geez. That's a lot of kids. Ken laughed, yeah but I'd rather them be overwhelming the compound than them being out on the streets again in danger or dead. Same with the two of you. Even if you don't choose to stay with me and my pack, I will still make sure you are safe and cared for by someone else. Nito bit his lip, I'm not sure I would trust anyone else with our safety. He stopped talking as Himiko started coughing hard. Coco? You okay? He asked, worried. Himiko attempted to wave him off, her coughing growing louder and stronger before hacking into her hand. She looked up at them, her eyes cloudy with pain. Nito gasped, Sheet. You're bleeding. Ken could see the bright red blood in her palm and leaking out of her mouth. He called up to the driver, get us to the base fast. He roared, pulling Himiko into his arms. Nito, buckle up, this is about to get rough. Nito wasted no time, buckle barely clicking before the car took a sharp turn, speeding up and racing through the streets. Coco, please don't leave me. Nito whined. Himiko flicked her eyes towards her brother, Nei. She whispered, her cleaner hand reaching out to grip his. No one is dying on my watch. Ken growled, I haven't lost a pup before and I'm not starting now. He vowed, relieved when the car skidded to a stop. He threw the door open, quickly jumping out and racing Himiko into the building, knowing that Nito was following them. His bosses were already inside the infirmary, Chiyo having readied a bed for the girl. She started coughing blood in the car. Nito, her brother, told me that her quirk is blood ingestion based. Chiyo began to work on the girl, cleaning her arm of dirt and grime to prepare it for N4. How long has it been since she had blood, clean blood? Nito squeaked from next to the bed, she had a few gulps of mine. A week ago, but we both knew it wasn't enough. As for clean blood that wasn't mine, it's been nearly 4 months. Chiyo frowned, she's going to need blood as well, do you know her type? Nito shook his head, no, sorry. Chiyo looked at him finally, a soft smile on her face. Don't worry pup, she's just blood-starved. I've seen it before in blood-based quirk users. Nito began to cry, is she going to be okay? Chiyo nodded, yes child, she just needs food, blood and rest and she will be fine. It will take a bit longer since it's been so long but with time she will be back to healthy form. Ken sighed in relief. That's great Chiyo. Thank you. He turned to Nito. How about I show you your rooms and you can get all cleaned up before coming back to stay with her. There's nothing we can do except leave Chiyo to her work. I promise you can come back in here to be with her after you get cleaned up and eat something. He held out his hand again, waiting patiently for the boy to take it. I don't want to leave her alone. Nito whined. Himiko coughed, Nei, go get clean. Eat. Come back. She ordered as much as she could. Nito frowned and crossed his arms, fine but I don't like it. Nito froze as a tall blonde stepped up. Hey pup, I'm Hizashi Shirayamazawa. My mates are gonna stay here with your sister while I go make you food. How about once you are cleaned up you can come back here to eat? Nito stared at the tall alpha before nodding silently. Ken thanked the man as he ushered Nito out and down the hall. Don't worry Nito, she's in good hands and will be right as rain before you know it. Nito huffed, promise? He nodded, yeah, if Chiyo says it is the case, well, she's never wrong. She knows her stuff. He didn't say anything else and barely glanced about the room as he was shown the bathroom inside. Here's some clothes from Izuku's closet. He's about the same size as you, I think. The blonde, Hizashi, was back, holding out a pile of folded clothes. The underwear is new though, don't worry about that. Nito bit back a laugh, simply grabbing the clothes with a nod before locking himself in the bathroom. It took longer than he thought it would for the water to finally run clear, but he was thankful the water stayed hot anyways. He dried himself with one of the fluffiest towels he had ever seen before slipping on the borrowed clothes, chuckling at the random words painted across the shirt. He stayed silent as he was walked back to the infirmary and settled into a chair with a basic meal of soup and toast with the excuse that he needed to work his way back up to more solid foods and larger portions. He ate silently, watching his sleeping sister before falling asleep himself. Inui Ryo, better known as Hound Dog, was no stranger to patrols around the territory during times of duress. Although usually he had a partner in Kansas. But seeing as Ken had recently found and abruptly adopted 2 sick stray pups, he had decided to stay within the compound. Not that Inui could be angry at that since he would probably do the same thing. Inui turned the corner, tilting his nose up into the air before growling sharply at the scent-laden wind. Quickly, he pulled out his phone, dialing his pack leaders. She's here. Ryudo Street, just south of the market. He hung up at the affirmation, following the scent closer to his bounty. Luckily, it wasn't just his sense of smell that was heightened but also his sight and hearing as he hid at the voices coming out of the alley. What do you mean you ran? He heard his former packmate Emmy hiss. The man she was talking to growled back, I mean it was between killing off the Idas and losing my life or running to try again another day. Now they have my territory and I want it back. Those hushed words told Inui all he really needed to know about the man. This was Kiryaka, the old boss of the territory that his bosses had taken over. This man was responsible for the death of Tensei and Tenya's parents. He tuned back in. You were supposed to kill them. That's what you were paid to do, and you failed. And now you want me to reward your incompetence? Emmy laughed incredulously. Kiryaka mumbled something Inui couldn't hear but Emmy did, causing her to lash out at him. You idiot. The payment was for all 4 of the Idas, not just 2. The Shirayamazawa family needs to fall for my plans to come into fruition. I can't get my prize unless the leaders fall. I thought taking those pups away from their parents would cause it, and by the time I realized it wouldn't, the DMN pups had gone missing. And wouldn't you know it, after a few months of searching for them, I find them in the arms of their fathers. Where I didn't want them to be. I paid that alpha good money to kill the Homingu girl and he failed, same as the DMN Poltia crew members. I even gave them another pup to do their experimentations on as payment. Inui had to hold back a growl at her words. She had been behind everything going wrong with his pack. He pounced into the alley, startling the two. He growled as the two ran, joke faster than Kiryaka, who seemed to have a twisted ankle. He hissed at the knowledge that he was going to have to choose which person to go after, and unfortunately, Kiryaka was the only one he could easily capture. But from the words spoken between the two, Kiryaka knew more about Joke's current affairs than his pack did, so the chances of getting a hold of her later was slightly better than none. Inui wasted no time in attacking the still wobbling man, bringing him down to the ground and laying his whole weight on Kiryaka before wrestling him into a few zip ties he had in his pockets. Kiryaka, screaming the whole time, attempted to fight back but was no match for the much larger man, even if he was an Omega. Angrily, Inui slammed Kiryaka's head into the ground, knocking him unconscious before calling for a ride. The prior Mafia boss was going to answer some questions. Whether he liked it or not. Tensei stormed down the hallway, throwing open the cell door with a bang. He snarled as his eyes caught the sight of the Alpha strung up like a weird version of a volleyball net, both arms and legs spread and tied to the neighboring poles. Shota was settled on a couch nearby, watching as his mates took turns beating on the man. Tensei paced over to his boss and brother. "Did they get anything out of him yet?" he asked. Shota shrugged. "Not really anything new. We already knew that Joke paid him to kill off your family, but he claims to not know why she wanted you four dead. We also know due to Hound Dog's report that Joke is responsible for not only the attack done on your family but also the one that nearly took out Izuku as well as the one on Momo." Tensei rumbled. "So in other words, he's not very useful, is he?" Shota grinned, wide and with too many teeth. "Well, maybe you can change that. I did promise you your revenge after all." Tensei smirked, staring at the man responsible for the death his parents and near death his brother. He stalked forward as Shota whistled to regain his mates' attentions, only beginning his assault once they had sat down next to Shota. "Hello, Kiryaka," he began, slightly joyful at the way Kiryaka's face was busted up, one eye swollen shut completely. "I see my bosses were taking good care of you. Unfortunately, you won't be receiving such niceties from me today." He stepped to the side as Kiryaka spat a glob of blood at him. "Go to hell." The Alpha cursed weakly. Tensei snorted, gripping the man's chin tightly, forcing him to look up. "Yeah, no. Hell is reserved for traitors like you. We came in peace, my family and I. We offered our alliance and you used that to kill my parents and nearly killed my baby brother." He smirked, one of his claws coming out and piercing the man's cheek. "And like a coward, you ran to save yourself instead of dying on the hill you started a war on." Kiryaka hissed at the pain. "Kaizome will come find me. He'll kill you all." Tensei laughed, dropping his hand. "Oh? Did you not know?" He grabbed Kiryaka's throat. "I destroyed Kaizome. I stopped him from his attempt at murdering my brother and tore him to shreds. The biggest part of him left was his head. He's dead and he won't be rescuing you, no one will. Your territory is ours. Your pack is dead. Your allies are even ours now, each of them appalled with what you did that day. You will die here by my hand. But I do have good news for you." He dropped his grip, walking over to the table of tools, picking up a large knife. "The good news is that if you answer all my questions, you can avoid a painful death. Disobey me, lie to me or simply remain quiet, and well, I'll make sure you scream and beg for mercy for as long as it takes to get my answers, even if it takes days or weeks to get them. I'm a very patient man, and you have information I want." Kiryaka stared at Tensei, fear beginning to seep into his features. "Wait. It wasn't my idea. I swear." Tensei snorted, rubbing his thumb against the edge of the blade. "It might not have been your idea, but you still did it. You still turned what could have been an alliance into a massacre. You took money from our enemy with the intent of killing off my pack. You made the decision to betray us. And now you will pay for it with your life." He pulled a folding chair closer to the Alpha's hanging form. What shall I ask first?" "Oh. I know," he mused. "How about you tell me how much money Joke paid you to murder my family?" Kiryaka started to struggle against his restraints. "Please. Don't do this," he shouted. Tensei tooted, "Wrong answer." He flicked the knife, blade etching a shallow cut into one arm. "You know, I've never tried to use the death by 1,000 cuts method of torture before. I've always wanted to, so thank you for being my volunteer." He faced his boss as Oboro called out, "That one is my personal favorite, although Shota in particular likes the old Lingchi method." Tensei tilted his head. "Oh? I've never heard of that one." Shota bounced in his seat. "Oh. That's where you use a knife to remove small bits of flesh from different parts of the torso and limbs. It's fun but definitely messy." Tensei hummed, turning back to Kiryaka. "Well then, if you don't die from the 1,000 cuts, maybe I'll try that one." Kiryaka screeched, "You lot are monsters. Tensei growled, backhanding the alpha across the face. No, we aren't. We're said. You allied yourself with a traitor and killed our family and pack members. You nearly killed a pup, one that hasn't even gotten his first rut yet. A child. He roared, throwing his fist into the man's gut. And you will regret everything you did to my parents. He sighed deeply. Anyways, let's continue. Tell me how much Joke paid you. Kiryaka whimpered, 3 million yen. She paid me 3 million yen to get rid of you and the rest of the Idas. Tensei smiled, standing and patting the top of Kiryaka's head. Good boy. He walked over to the table again, placing the knife back down. Next question, he picked up the pliers before sitting back down. How did she contact you? He gripped Kiryaka's hand in his, placing the pliers against his fingernails. He couldn't help the wave of pleased scent when Kiryaka whimpered again. She called me. Asked for a meeting. Said her boss wanted to discuss an alliance. Tensei frowned, turning to look at his bosses. Shota walked over to them. Who's her boss? He asked Kiryaka. Tensei growled when Kiryaka stayed silent. Answer him. Kiryaka shook his head, fear scent wafting off of him in droves. Fine. He gripped a thumbnail in the pliers, yanking harshly. Kiryaka shrieked, stop. Tensei hissed, tell us who her boss is. Again, the alpha shook his head, denying to answer. Tensei gripped another nail, giving it a tug as he pulled it out. Tell us who her boss is and I'll stop pulling nails. Kiryaka was stubborn, still choosing to remain silent. Tensei didn't waste any more time, pulling 2 more nails in quick succession. Her boss is Overhaul. Kiryaka finally broke. Tensei stood, pulling the chair away from where it had been sitting. Thank you. As promised, the pliers were put down. Instead, Tensei picked up a long whip, each of the 9 ends covered in what looked like fishhooks. He moved around to the backside of Kiryaka, flicking it against the alpha. Kiryaka roared, arching his back away from the pain. You didn't ask any questions. He screamed. Tensei hummed, I know. That was to show you what you would get more of if you refused again. What are Joke's plans? What does she want with us? Oboro stepped forward, struggling to rein in his alpha. Kiryaka shook his head, I don't know. Tensei hissed, I don't like that answer. He swung again, relishing the sound of the whip hitting Kiryaka's bare back. He didn't give the man a moment to speak, hitting him over and over again. What do you know? Tensei asked calmly. Kiryaka shuddered, gasping for air. I don't know why she is doing all this against your pack. She never told me. I've only heard rumors. Tensei watched as Oboro pulled Kiryaka's head up, making him look Oboro in the eyes. What are the rumors? Kiryaka hissed as his back was twisted. Rumor was she took your pups because she wanted your pack to fall apart. It was said she wanted Eraserhead for her own and thought if his alphas blamed him for the missing pups, they would break their mating and leave him for her to snatch up. The 4 men exchanged looks of shock. Tensei stared at Shota who had his mouth open. This is my fault? My pups were kidnapped because some alpha beach thought I would want her. He sank into the couch again, folding his knees up into his chest. Tensei could smell the scent of bitter coffee and burnt wood coming from the black-haired Omega. He frowned at the other 2. Why don't you take him back to your rooms? He needs you both and I can finish up here. He offered. Hizashi nodded as Oboro picked up their mate to hold him close to his chest. Let us know what you find out. Oboro whispered as the group passed him. Tensei waited until they left the room, the door clicking shut, before turning back to the alpha. What other rumors? He grunted, taking a step forward. He paused as an acidic smell hit his senses and he realized that Kiryaka had set himself in fear. DMN, that's nasty. Tell me the rest of the rumors now or you'll find that there's a whole new reason to fear me. A few hours later, Tensei left the cell, leaving the misshapen body of the former Mafia boss hanging from his chains. It had taken longer than he wanted to get all the answers out of Kiryaka, but now they knew everything they could before going after Joke herself. He stalked to his rooms, quickly jumping in the shower, thankful that Tenya didn't see him covered in blood. Tensei wrapped a towel around his waist and left the bathroom only to stop short at the sight of his little brother sitting on his bed. Tenya? What are you doing? What's wrong? He asked. Tenya bit his lip, staring at Tensei in silence. Is it over? He finally asked. Tensei's shoulders dropped, a puff of held breath escaping. Yeah, baby brother, it's over. Kiryaka is dead. He moved to his closet, pulling out a clean pair of jeans and a dark blue t-shirt. How did you know? He asked, removing his towel once Tenya had closed his eyes. He was quick to pull on boxers and his pants before sitting next to Tenya. I could smell his stench when I came down the hall. I was afraid at first that he had gotten into our home, but then I heard your shower going and figured the rest out. Tensei nodded. Makes sense. I took care of him myself. He jumped as his arms were suddenly full of pup. He could feel Tenya shaking with tears, his bare chest growing wet. Tensei rubbed his hand across his brother's back. Shoo, it's okay Ten. Kiryaka's dead, he won't ever hurt you again. I got our revenge. Shhhh. He whispered softly as he rubbed his cheek against the top of the younger alpha's head. He released calming pheromones, scenting his crying brother. It'll be okay Ten. I promise. They stayed that way for a while until Tensei felt Tenya slump against him. He huffed in amusement, realizing that his brother had cried himself to sleep in his arms. Adjusting Tenya in his arms, he maneuvered the boy into his bed, covering the sleeping pup with heavy covers before slipping his shirt on and leaving the room. He had information to share. The Shirayamazawa family wasted no time in creating a meeting between themselves and the Shai Hasaikai's leader Overhaul. Oboro in particular was surprised that the bratty adopted child of the former leader was the new boss, but research stated that the man had fallen ill and was currently in a coma. Rumor had it that Overhaul himself put the man there, using his quirk in a fit of rage at not getting his way with the leadership. Our meeting point is in this building, Oboro stated, pointing at a single spot on the map of the city. The large black X was situated on the corner of a block of other warehouses, some in use but others, like the one they needed, were abandoned or falling apart. Their route, both to the meeting and away, were etched on the map in bright red marker, while the small blue dots stationed on each corner through the whole route signified station fighters, there in case there was a fight, or they needed a safe getaway. Eraserhead, Screech and I will be in the middle car while Ingenium and Vlad will be in the car in front and Midnight and Snipe in the rear. We are due to arrive at 1300 hours. Expect for the Shai Hasaikai to have arrived early to stake out the place for their own protection. Oboro was interrupted as the door slammed open, revealing Izuku in a suit. Izuku, we are in a meeting. Hizashi stated. Izuku bowed his head. I know, I'm going. The room was silent at his declaration. Shota shook his head, you're only a pup, we aren't taking you. Izuku didn't flinch, staring at his three dads. I'm going. I will keep in the shadows, but I am going. If they try anything, my quirk will be useful in getting away with the least number of casualties. 2 erasure quirks are better than 1. Besides, I've been working on my quirk and now I can make the clouds float before dropping down on people. He steeled his shoulders, looking the adults in their eyes. The 3 men exchanged glances before Shota sighed. Fine, but you will not fight anyone, and you will stay hidden at all costs. I'm not losing you again. Izuku nodded, pleased that he was allowed to help. Oboro continued where he left off. I have scouts stationed inside the warehouse already. They are to let us know when the Shai Hasaikai arrive. They also have orders to message us every half hour, so we know their status. I don't want us being blindsided again like we were with Kiryaka. I'm not losing anyone if I can help it. Any questions so far? Izuku stood up, drawing all eyes to his small frame. Not really a question, but I might have something that can help. I borrowed the street cameras in Osaka. He coughed into his hand. Might have stayed up all night searching out the Shai Hasaikai members to get a fix on what their quirks are. Shota growled, we'll talk about your sleeping habits later. What did you find out? Izuku smiled sheepishly, ignoring are we just going to ignore his blatant hacking of the government street cameras? Whispered by Hizashi to Oboro. Instead, he pulled out a notebook, opening it quickly. Overhaul, de facto boss of the Shai Hasaikai Yakuza. Quirk, Overhaul. With all 5 fingers he can manipulate matter by disassembling anything he touches, as well as reassemble it in any configuration he desires, effectively giving him full control over matter. Both natural and man-made. He is extremely deadly if he gets his hands on you. He took a deep breath. He tends to wear white gloves and an old-school doctor's mask, the ones that look like bird beaks. He's also an extreme germaphobe. Izuku paused as one of the low-level fighters spoke. How do you know all that about his quirk, kid? Izuku stared him in the eyes. I watched him kill a random thug of his in an alleyway. He's quick. I blinked and the man in front of him was nothing more than a cloud of red mist. I also watched him do the same to one of his inner circle only to bring him back by touching the mist. The room was silent. Izuku took a breath, continuing. He has his right-hand man and his inner circle. His right-hand man is Hari Kurono. His quirk is chronostasis. He shoots the clock hand-shaped hairs on his head to slow down his targets. Minute hands pause for minutes, hour hands for up to an hour. His inner circle calls themselves the 8 bullets, which, honestly, is stupid because there's 9 of them. There's Shin Nemoto, quirk, confession. By asking a question, he can compel the person to tell him the truth. Rikiya Katsukame, whose quirk is called Energy SCK and allows him to siphon and use other people's stamina. Toya Setsuno, his quirk is called Larceny. If it's not bolted down, he can steal it. Weapons, clothes, anything really. There's also RuHoJo, Quirk Crystallize, basic really, he can create crystals all over his body and while they are strong, they aren't unbreakable. Soramitsu Tabe, Quirk is called Food. It allows his teeth to easily chew through and consume any solid substance, no matter how durable even if it isn't something we would normally consider edible. He's insatiable too. He paused to count on his fingers, Next is Kendo Rappa. Rappa's quirk is called Strong Arm, and it allows his arms to move at a rapid pace, letting him hit someone fast like a bullet, but it only lasts a few seconds at most. Hikiji Tengai's quirk is called Barrier and it acts as such. Usually, he's seen near Rappa to give him cover to rest between uses of Strong Arm. Didoro Sakaki is not really a person I would see near someone with the strength of Overhaul, but here he is. His quirk is called Sloshed and literally leaves you feeling and acting like you were drunk. The more he drinks, the worse it gets. From all I could find, he tends to hide away in the ceilings. Finally, there is Mimic, also known as Joy Iranaka. His quirk is the ability to merge his body and mind in any inanimate object as long as it is the size of a fridge or smaller. Izuku jerked to look at the person who had spoken earlier. How did you get this much information on them in only one night? Izuku snorted, I hacked the police files on them. They have a surprisingly large amount of data on the Shai Hasaikai. I also took the chance to look at their files on us and fix them if you will. He grinned. Shota facepalmed, what do you mean you fixed them? Izuku giggled, they were already outdated horribly so I just made a few numbers different. Little things like someone's height or age, or small things like their hair color or eye color being off. I didn't do that to everyone but to most. Where did you learn to hack, kiddo? Midnight purred. Izuku blushed, it was something Toshi and I taught ourselves before we left the orphanage. We were bored after school most days as the homework was easy, so we taught ourselves things like hacking, tracking, healing, and some psychology. That doesn't include how far ahead we got in school subjects. Oboro waved his hand, we're getting sidetracked, thank you for your information Izuku, it's very helpful. An hour later it was time to move, each person filing out into cars and trucks. Izuku found himself in the same car as his dad's, each of them checking over their various weapons. Izuku, I want you to climb into the rafters from the outside stairs. Stay up there unless we need to run, and I swear you had better be on your best guard and behavior. Shota said sternly, holding out a sharp knife. Izuku grinned, pulling aside his jacket and showing the assortment of weapons. I already have weapons. Mei and Tenya gave me theirs. Mei made me a bow staff, one that won't blow up, and Tenya gave me his knuckle dusters that have blades on them. Tuya gave me his throwing knives. They knew they couldn't all go, and we decided together to send me to help protect our pack. Hizashi whistled. DMN pup, that's impressive. Shota sighed, fine, but at first hint of trouble I want you back at the cars. Izuku nodded, yes sir. He looked away as Oboro pulled his two mates into a deep kiss, nipping at their lips. You both be careful. He ordered. Izuku giggled as Hizashi exaggerated swooning, but it did its job and relieved the tension in the air. They pulled up to the warehouse, the building looking even worse than the pictures showed. Izuku, Shota pointed to the set of stairs leading up to the second floor. Used those. Keep an eye out. Izuku nodded, leaving his dad's sides and quickly climbed the stairs. The door made no sounds as it swung open easily, allowing Izuku to find himself on a bare-bones catwalk. He crept around, keeping an eye down on the floor below as he released his quirked clouds into the ceiling. He could see one of their men who had been stationed there leaning up against the other side of the railing across the ceiling from him and shook his head as the man didn't even flinch at the presence of the pup. Finishing his part of the plan, he paused to watch as his fathers walked in with his aunt and uncles before moving to the side with the guard. I can't believe you haven't even moved when we arrived. Are you simply sleeping on the job? He scolded softly as he placed his hand on the man's shoulders. He jumped as the man slumped forward, crashing to the ground. Horrified, Izuku couldn't look away as the guard's head rolled away from the rest of his body before letting out a scream as he scrambled away from the fallen form. Izuku could hear his dad's calling for him, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the body now gushing blood. The catwalk quickly filled with the blood, the pond seeping towards Izuku. He jumped as hands pulled him away, his eyesight filled with that of his father's as the rest of the pack filed in around them for protection. He could see Shota yelling at him while checking Izuku over for any wounds, but he couldn't hear anything through the thundering in his ears. Shota said something to someone else before picking the still silently shaking boy up and carrying him back to the car, Hizashi and Oboro right behind them. Izuku knew he was losing time when he blinked and found himself in the car. Another blink and he was in the infirmary at the compound with Chiyo looking him over closely. He groaned, sounds finally coming back. Izuku, pup? Are you back? He turned his head to see his dad staring at him from chairs near the bed. Izuku swallowed and nodded, yes sir. Sorry. Shota sat on the bed next to him before he pulled him into a hug. Don't apologize, kiddo. You didn't do anything wrong. Izuku climbed into Shota's lap, shaking against Shota's chest. He listened as his dad's heartbeat pounded away at his chest while Shota's hand played with his hair. Izuku, can you tell us what happened? We were so scared when you screamed like that, and when we reached you, you wouldn't speak. Oboro whispered loudly. Izuku closed his eyes, a tear rolling down his cheek. IG got to the catwalk and saw the guard just standing there. Thought he was sleeping on the J-job. He stuttered. I released my clouds and walked over to him and was joking about him being asleep, but when I put my hand on his shoulder, he collapsed and his head rolled away. Izuku shuddered, looking up at the men's faces. Shota had his eyes closed, but Hizashi and Oboro were doing that thing adults do when they talk without words. What? Izuku asked. Oboro sighed. The guards were a message to us. Sometime in the 30 minutes we last had contact with them to us arriving, the Shirayamazawa arrived and killed the two, leaving their bodies for us to find before leaving the area. When we searched the bodies for any clues, we found a note on the one you found stating that Overhaul was declaring war on us and that he refused to give us joke. Hizashi spoke next. We will be discussing with the rest of the pack about what to do next at tomorrow's meeting. Until then, you need to rest. Hitoshi and the other pups have already been told what happened and are preparing a cuddle session in the lounge. I believe they called it an all-night sleepover party, but I know it's gonna be a cuddle fest instead. Izuku snorted. Sounds about right. He yawned, pulling himself away from Shota and hopping down off the bed. I'm sorry I freaked out so badly. Shota frowned, ruffling Izuku's hair. Don't worry about it, pup. I would have done the same thing if I had had that happen to me. I'm just so glad you are safe. The three men watched as the greenette nodded before leaving the room. After the door clicked closed, Shota turned to his mates. They won't get anywhere near our pups again, he snarled. Oboro and Hizashi agreed. We're not going. Hitoshi yelled, his fists tight to his sides. Shota sighed. They had been having this fight for almost an hour now. You and the other pups are going to the safe house. Kigo will even be there with you as added protection since he's PRGNNT, and I will not hear another argument about it. He yelled back. Hitoshi snarled, Izuku and I are not leaving your side. Us pups can fight. You guys have been teaching us for weeks now to protect ourselves, and now, when we have need to do so, you're gonna just hide us away like infants? Shota growled, you are still children, Hitoshi. I know you want to go, but your fathers and I can't keep ourselves safe if we are constantly worried about you and your brother. It is for our safety as much as yours that you stay at the safe house where we know you will be safe from harm. We already lost you both once. How do you think we'd feel if either of you died because we allowed you to fight before you were ready? Huh? He grabbed Hitoshi's hands in his. Please son, please understand. We aren't doing this to baby you. We know you are strong and brave, but we, as your dads, need to protect you a bit longer. Please understand that. Hitoshi rolled his eyes, sighing. Fine. Fine. We'll go to the safe house with Kigo. But if any of you get badly hurt, so help us, we will be so fing angry. Shota snorted, language pup, but sure. We will do our best to stay safe. He gently pushed Hitoshi towards the door. Go sit with the other pups in the lounge. We will come gather you all when we are done with our war meeting. The war meeting lasted hours on end. Arguments were started and finished within the same breath, and yet, nothing got done during each one. Enough. Shota slammed his fist into the table. He had been angering easier than before, and his sensitivity to smells only made it worse, especially surrounded by as many alphas as he had been. This is pointless. Arguments like these are not getting us where we need to be. Kyoku, Jakub. You are both right and also wrong. Overhaul is both our biggest and smallest worry here. Storm, Midnight. Leaving our pups in the very capable hands of Red Wing and Fuyumi is the best thing for them. I refuse to take them into battle before they are ready. I should have put my foot down at the warehouse, and I regret not doing so. I will not be making that mistake again. He took a deep breath. Now, can we please make actual plans for this FING war with the Shirayamazawa? Oboro and Namuri at least looked properly scolded, but the other two underlings just sneered at the other. Hizashi cleared his throat. What else do we need, Eraserhead? Shota rummaged through some papers. We still need to plan out positions, pathways through their base as well as teams. Shota paused, looking down at his phone as it beeped. Son of a beach. He stared up at the camera in the corner. Get your buttes in here now. He ordered. Everyone was visibly confused until the door opened, revealing Izuku, Hitoshi, Denki, Momo, Tenya, Mei, and Tuya. What part of you aren't a part of this do you six not understand? Shota growled. Izuku crossed his arms. The part where it is our business as you are our parents, and if you won't allow us to come along then we should at least be allowed to help plan so the chances of you returning are greater. Izuku hissed, I get that you don't want us on site but there is absolutely no reason we can't help in other ways. I can get intel. Hitoshi has a grasp on the inner workings of others' minds that would be useful to know how to see for yourself. Denki knows electricity and anything that conducts it like no one else. Tenya great with speed and traveling times. Momo can make things that may needs to create weapons and gear that each of you might need. And Tuya is FING going with you, so why the hell isn't he in this meeting? He tilted his head at his father's. I get that you three don't want us going into battle with you, but I'll be dmed if you continue to keep us in the dark on the planning. Shota looked at the rest of his pack. Namuri and Tensei were looking at their shoes, but he could see that they agreed with Izuku. Oboro and Hizashi were angry at their interference like he was, but also not as much as Shota was, more like disappointment at their disobeying of direct orders. Shoshir was silent but he was looking at Shota, his eyes signaling a silent, what do you think about it? He sighed, fine, but you are not to leave the safe house once we leave you there. Izuku shrugged, what about if the safe house becomes no longer safe? Shota rolled his eyes, if that becomes the case, which I seriously doubt, then fine, you may guide the rest of the pups away. Izuku nodded, settling into a chair at the table, much to the amusement of his pack. Izuku, would you like to share your ideas with the class? Shota deadpanned. Izuku smirked, yes actually. Because of the intel gathering I did before the warehouse, we know the major players' quirks. We know Joke's quirk as well. As much as I really don't want my family being separated, it is going to make the most sense in terms of teams. He glanced at Momo who nodded, using her quirk to print out a map. Izuku thanked her before setting the map down on the table. This is a map of the Shai Hasaikai base. I suspect that it isn't truly complete due to both Mimics and Overhaul's quirks, but it will be close. I believe that everyone should enter here at the front gate, working together to defeat the grunts before moving into the building further. If they are smart, they will most likely try to separate you into smaller groupings, probably by using Mimic. Tensei frowned, I thought you said that Mimic couldn't control anything bigger than a fridge. Izuku nodded, yes, but I think Overhaul has been dealing in Trigger. His inner circle will probably end up using it. He could see the people in the room scrunch their noses with disgust. Mimic for sure would use Trigger since I've heard he has a Napoleon complex, probably Katsukame as well. Oboro sighed, thank you Izuku. What else do you have? Izuku pointed at the second floor on the map. I believe that somewhere around the middle of the second floor going down, there should be a hidden entrance to a secret floor. My bet is that if Overhaul isn't above ground that he would be within this floor due to how secure it is as long as you don't know it's there. One of the grunts spoke up, if it's a hidden floor that no one but Overhaul and his circle know about, how is it that you have the knowledge? Izuku grinned, gesturing to Mei. Mei, would you like to do the honors? Mei cackled, yep. So, I created a bug. Literally. It looks like a bug and acts like a bug, both in the sense of technology and biology. She pulled what looked to be a spider out of her jacket pocket. Everyone could see the way the arachnid had fur and eyes, making it look incredibly realistic. I have multiple different versions, each with different sizes. The hair on this one's legs acts as a sensory element, pulling in data from the air around it to both hear and feel disturbances. The eyes have 180-degree vision in each of them, and that adds to the sound waves the hairs get to create a perfect recording of anything happening nearby. Eventually, this little baby will be able to create a thin wire that looks and feels like spider-spun silk but have the strength to lift a grown man's weight. She giggled, drawing a smile from Tenya. The one I sent after Overhaul is about the size of a pinhead. Momo helped me make the materials in the proper sizes. Midnight grinned, I knew my two daughters were smart, but I didn't realize just how brilliant they are. I'm so proud. Izuku snorted and looked at the man who asked that question. Satisfy your curiosity enough? The man could only nod, but his neighbor swore. DMN, Mini-Boss has got a genius team together. Izuku didn't think that guy intended on his words being heard, but from the looks of pride on his dad's faces, he knew they had been. Okay, so we know basic information about quirks, compound layout, and possible trigger usages. Anything else? Hizashi asked. Izuku shook his head. No, unfortunately, I still don't know everyone's quirks, so I didn't have the ability to make teams based on them. Shota took a deep breath. Is there anything else that your team could gather? Behaviors, possible weak links? Anything? Izuku looked at Hitoshi. We've already said that Mimic has a Napoleon complex, but there's also Rappa who is loyal to a fault. Currently, I suspect that the only reason he follows Overhaul is because Overhaul bested him in a fight. If you can win a fight with him, Rappa may change alliances. The rest of them won't even consider it and are probably better off dead. Denki chose that moment to speak. The whole compound is on one electrical grid. If anyone cuts the power of that building, the doors and windows will lock, and you will not be able to move about without turning the power back on. Shota nodded, taking in the information as Tenya stepped up. It will take you around 3 hours to get to the Shirayamazawa compound from here. If you take the main roads only and leave at around 1900 hours, you can cut that down to 2.5 as workday traffic will have finished by then. Taking the fuel-efficient vehicles will also help as they will carry more weight with less issue. Izuku stood up from the chair as Tenya finished. Mei and Momo have left a large pile of weapons and gear in the weapons room. Anyone who grabs from that pile needs to read the manual on top of it. Other than that we have nothing else, and at this point I think it is best if us kids leave. Izuku led the rest of the children out of the room, leaving only Tuya behind. Was there a reason I was left out of this meeting? Tuya started, one eyebrow raised while his arms crossed over his chest. There were mutters around the room at the seemingly sharp disrespect coming from the slightly scarred teen, but the three bosses knew it was anything but. Not really. We figured we could inform you later so you could spend time with your PRGNNT mate. Oboro answered. Tuya nodded. I appreciate the thought, but I'd rather know that I was doing everything I could to make sure I came home to him. The subject was dropped, and plans were finalized, leaving everyone to dismiss themselves at their own paces until it was only Shota, Oboro, Hizashi, Shoshu, Namuri, Tensei and Tuya in the room. Did you three hear Jacoby earlier? He seemed so scared yet impressed with the green bean. Namuri stated, a large grin stretched across her face. Shota laughed, yes. I had a hard time not simply beaming at the pride rushing through me. And DMN, Mei and Momo make a great team, you should be thrilled. Hizashi squealed. Namuri and Shoshu nodded. Those two girls are gonna go far, I'm tellin' ya. Shoshu drawled. Tuya laughed, you should probably see Mei's workshop. He rubbed the back of his neck. Although you should definitely go there with her just in case. Some of her things are rather explosive. Shoshu snorted, sounds like a plan. He faced Oboro, I'd rather like to see how many different animals she can make besides those spiders. Oboro nodded, yes definitely, that was brilliant, and the fact that she and Izuku managed to get them into the Shirayamazawa compound is impressive. Shota's phone dinged, drawing the attention of all the adults. He sighed as he looked at the text. Problem Child says that Mei has plans for snakes, dogs, birds and roaches to name a few. He glared up at the camera. Tensei snorted, should have known the green bean wouldn't stop watching the cameras even after leaving the meeting. Shota's phone dinged again. He says that he hasn't used the cameras except for the street ones he used to gather quirk info. Seems Mei's camtours, her name for them apparently, needed testing, and he's been leaving them all over the compound and guiding them around town for the last day or so. The room was silent as everyone pondered the new information. Scary. Hizashi whispered. The next day Izuku and Hitoshi spent the morning cuddling with their dads and Denki. Mei and Momo had eaten breakfast with their parents and Tenya had gone for a small run with Tensei. Tuya had stayed in bed with his small family piled up on top of him. Each of the small families were doing their best to push aside any worries about the upcoming battle and simply be with their loved ones. Soon enough it was time, and after goodbyes were said, the pups, Fuyumi and Kigo, were driven to the safe house they were to be hidden away in. Once inside, the doors and windows were locked and each of the kids found themselves piled up in the main room. I miss Tuya already, Kigo stated, rubbing his belly. He wasn't showing yet, but his scent had already taken on that milky tone of whelping. Shoto and Fuyumi curled closer to their pack member. They will be just fine. We did everything we could to prepare them with the right information and planning, and with us safely away, they won't have to split their attention. Fuyumi rubbed his back. Izuku grinned, that and I managed to sneak a few camtours into the vehicles. Once they arrive at the Shirayamazawa compound, we should be able to keep an eye on everything and we won't be left in the dark. Kigo snorted, of course you did. Why did I expect anything different? He shook his head, so, I heard you've been working on Nat's and Yumi's quirks. Find anything interesting? Izuku glanced at the two in question. Yes, actually, I think their expectations of their quirks are wrong. He held out an orange. Fuyumi, try to push your frost into this. She took the orange, confused. She stared at the fruit, concentrating hard before gasping as the orange grew cold before shattering. What the F dash? Hitoshi muttered. Izuku giggled, I thought so. Fuyumi, you don't have a weak frost quirk. You have a strong cryogenic quirk. You can push your frost into things and freeze them so quickly that the liquid inside explodes. We will have to work on it so you can control how much gets frozen, but it's a very powerful quirk. He turns to face Natsuo. I think you can do something similar except somewhat more of a temperature scale. He hands him another orange, this one steaming. Why the hell did you heat up an orange? Natsuo quipped. Izuku grinned, experiments. He giggled, so I want you to try to take the heat from this orange. Think about it like you would trying to warm yourself up, but don't grab the heat from the air, grab it from the orange instead. The group watched silently as Natsuo focused on the orange. Soon enough they could see the steam slow down and eventually stop altogether before little ice crystals began to form on the peel. How the F did I do that? Natsuo wondered. Izuku took the orange, tossing it back and forth between his hands. I wondered how you were heating yourself back up after being cold. It didn't make sense that you could only keep yourself from being frozen. The heat you used had to come from somewhere. I noticed once when you were in the kitchen how the room got incredibly colder when you came out of the freezer. Then, I went into the freezer you just left and found it covered in massive ice crystals. Your body was cold and you naturally, and without realizing it, drained the surrounding area of the heat to raise your core temp up to normal. Kigo whistled, DMN kiddo, that's impressive. Although, I guess I shouldn't be surprised after what you figured out about Tuya's quirk. He opened his mouth to speak again before whipping his head around to stare at the front door. Alert, the children all silenced themselves, watching Kigo intently. Kigo got to his feet and raised his hands. We have company and it's not the pack, he signed. Izuku nodded shortly, quickly directing the other children to stand up. Artificer, you and Creati work weapons. Tangenium, protect them. Bloodbat, Echo, grab quirks. He hissed as glass shattered inward. No need to be quiet now, they know we are here. Flex and Iceburn, capture whoever you can. Try to keep 1 or 2 alive for interrogation. Frost and Freeze, protect Redwing. Sparks, brainwash and I will disable as many as we can. There were sounds of agreement from each of them, all working into formation and stances. How the F did they find us? Redwing swore. Izuku growled, the pack only has a few safe houses. Joke must have told them where they were. They probably also checked all of them or kept watch on them until we arrived. He turned at the tap on his arm. Mei was handing him a bow staff. Smiling softly, he took it, thanks Artificer. He nudged her back towards the protection of Tangenium. He met the eyes of everyone, noting with approval at the sight of 2 Nidos before facing the door again. It was the only door in and out of the building for a reason, but it was still a stupid design considering it left them no choice but to fight their way to their only exit. The door finally blew up and a horde of people ran inside. Redwing sent out his feathers, catching a few of the attackers and pinning them before his 2 feather swords sliced clean through their necks. Izuku opened his mouth, a stream of clouds landing on each of the invaders and canceling their quirks. He waited a moment for the clouds to settle before jumping into the fray and landing a solid right hook in a face. He didn't recognize any faces and for that he was both thankful and scared as it meant that while they weren't going up against any of Overhaul's inner circle, their parents were. Izuku dodged a swinging fist from a woman with a clear fish mutation, quickly throwing her at Shoto, Iceburn, fire. He didn't watch Shoto use his fire but by the way the room grew hot for a split second, he knew he was heard. A few people later, the doorway was finally empty, and he turned to help his packmates with their attackers. Shoto and Hanta were back to back, working together to deal with a set of twins. One had knife arms and the other had turned their arms to what looked like bee stingers. Tenya, still protecting Momo and Mei, was using his quirk to slam his feet into various attackers. Mei and Momo had been backed into a corner and were producing little pellets that they would throw. Izuku watched one pellet hit someone, immediately exploding with gas and knocking the person out. He couldn't see Natsuo or Fuyumi from where he was standing but from the way the room would grow colder then hotter, Izuku knew they were okay. Izuku moved to the other side of the room, twisting necks and slicing into chests with his claws as he joined Hitoshi and Denki. For some reason, they were overrun with people attacking them, almost to the point of exhaustion. Izuku cleared some of the group away, not bothered by the number of deaths he was causing. They attacked his pack, their mistake. He jerked as a shriek came from Kigo, looking towards the teen to see someone pull a knife from his arm. Izuku growled, jumping towards the person and dragging them to the ground. He was furious. These people had chosen to attack children. They had purposefully waited for the adults to leave before attacking children thinking that they would be weak and defenseless. Their mistake, one that Izuku was going to make them see the light of. He could feel himself going feral, slipping down into the dark abyss of his mind but he couldn't speak, couldn't warn his pack. He just kept tearing into intruder after intruder, spraying blood and parts across the room. Something touched his shoulder and he growled before his mind went blissfully blank. It cleared from the feral tension and Izuku recognized the feeling of his brother's quirk. Stress drained from his shoulders and his ears cleared, allowing him to hear the words that were being said around him. Aizu, I'm gonna let you go now. Hitoshi stated. Izuku dropped to his knees from the relief. Thanks Tosh. Did I hurt anyone? He glanced around but it didn't look like anyone was missing. Hitoshi shook his head. No, Kigo used a feather to get you to growl for me to snatch your mind and everyone else stood far enough away. Izuku nodded, gaining his balance again. That's good. Injury report. Hitoshi nodded. Kigo is fine although he has a large stab wound in his arm. Tenya and Shoto have basic cuts and bruises. Hanta, Fuyumi and Natsuo only have bruises. Mei and Momo are fine, just tired. Denki went over his limit a few minutes before the end, but he's fine as well. Most of his assailants were tossed before they could hurt him. Izuku grinned, good. Momo, how are you doing on energy? The girl made a SOSO motion with her hand, a few high energy packs and maybe a drink or two and I'll be good to go. Izuku twitched his nose, walking silently to the kitchen. He knew his dads had stocked the fridge with everything the pups would want to eat or drink, including Momo's favorite energizers. Grabbing a few, he handed them to her. We've got a problem. Mei called. She was holding one of the camtour screens, staring at it intently. Izuku strode over, gently grabbing it away to look at what she was seeing. Every camtour was showing the adults who were fighting and unfortunately, not winning. They were slowly being overloaded, the sheer number of Yakuza piling up on the remaining adults. Izuku growled as he scrolled through the screens. We need to go help them. Kigo hissed, they won't like that. They sent you all here to protect you. Izuku frowned, I know but if we don't do anything, they will all die, and I am not going to let that happen. He turned to Mei and Momo. Make us a few more of those pellet bombs as well as bow staffs and some of my cloud bombs if you have the strength. Next was Shoto, Fuyumi and Natsuo. Make sure everyone is dead please. Finally, he faced his brother. We need a proper plan. They planned while Mei and Momo made their weapons and tools. Hanta and Denki had taken it upon themselves to search the safe house for the hidden stashes of weapons, finding a few guns and knives and distributing them. They might only be children but Izuku, Hitoshi, Denki, Tenya and Momo had been trained with guns and knives for the last few weeks. Sometimes it paid to be the children of a Mafia family. Izuku looked over Kigo. How's your arm? He asked. The bird quirk teen shrugged. It hurts a bit, but I'll be fine. I'm good enough to drive us there. Izuku nodded, checking that off his mental list. Okay guys, we need to leave and get to them. When we get there, we need to stick together, working our way through each room. The shy Hasaikai won't be expecting us since they sent their own attack our way. To them we are just kids, and they probably think we will have died in this attack. Same formations as before, keep an eye on the others. Tenya, grab a bag of energizers for Momo please, everyone else, grab the gear and move to the van. He steeled his shoulders. Those fuckers are going to regret ever hurting our pack. Shota growled as he tore into another low-level Yakuza thug. He and his mates had been fighting their way back to the rest of their pack for the last half hour and yet, they weren't making any headway. He had already seen a few of his lower-level members fall, their bodies covered in wounds and blood, and he knew that if they couldn't reach the rest of the pack, they would meet the same fate. Eraser. He heard Midnight call. She was swimming her way through the Yakuza, her sleeping mist on full blast. He looked her over quickly, noting the shredded clothes just barely covering her body. Where's Snipe? He yelled back, not seeing the protective alpha nearby. We got separated. Her claws ripped through someone's neck, spraying her chest with their blood. We need to meet up with the rest of the pack. Oboro ordered as he helped Hizashi kill another one. They worked faster and harder to make their way out of the room, finding themselves in a large atrium-like room. Shota could see Snipe, Vlad and Hound Dog grouped together on the other end of the room, Ingenium and Naomasa back-to-back a few feet away. Tensei caught the look of Shota, Tabe, Setsuno, Hojo, Sakaki, Mimic, Nemoto. Down. Overhaul, Kurono. Running. He yelled across the room. Shota gave a short nod as he turned to the next attacker. Slowly they worked their way together, grouping up finally. A few more of their men joined them, their numbers not as low as Shota expected but still lower than he wanted. He hissed as his small pack was surrounded, the sheer number of Yakuza leaving him with the expectation of impending death. He grabbed his mate's hands. I love you both. He heard mutters of the same from each of them. A movement on the outskirts of the Yakuza caught his attention and his breath stopped at the sight of Overhaul, Kurono and Joke. The crowd parted, allowing them to get closer. You've lost Shirayamazawa. You will die here. He grinned, but hey, at least you will see your pups again soon. Confusion clouded Shota's mind. What do you mean? They are safe. Overhaul smirked. I sent a few of my own members to all of your safe houses. Once they were sure which one held those brats, another group went to kill them. They should be dead right about now. Shota jerked as Midnight cried out, Snipe catching her as she fell to her knees. Why are you doing this? All we wanted was joke for her crimes against my pack. We had no qualms with you until you killed those 2 guards and left that message for us. Is she really so important that you would risk so much? That you would choose to kill my entire pack and myself? Shota questioned. Overhaul laughed humorlessly. Oh, dear Eraserhead, you misunderstand. He tilted his head. I am only going to kill your pack. You on the other hand, I have something much more decided for you. You won't get your filthy hands on our mate. Oboro yelled, pulling Shota closer to them. Joke sneered, you have no choice, it's not like you will be alive to protect him soon. Overhaul here needs his quirk for his experiments, and I've been promised his body. Shota scowled, yeah, no. That's not ever gonna happen. I'd rather die. That can be arranged, Eraserhead. You see, with my quirk, I can kill and revive you over and over again without worry. It'll hurt, a lot, but you won't be able to stop me. Overhaul stepped forward. Shota stiffened, bracing himself for the attack. Suddenly, the door blew inward, blue flames roasting the outskirts of the group before chaos erupted. Shota's eyes widened as Tuya raced inward, followed by a group that he was least expecting. Red Wing, help Dabi. Tangenium, get Artificer and Creati to midnight and snipe. Frost, Freeze and Iceburn, take the left. Flex, you know what to do. Brainwash, Sparks and I will take the right. Izuku directed. Shota, Hizashi and Oboro were quick to jump into the frantic scramble, each of them taking on either Joke, Kurono, or Overhaul. Oboro swung a heavy cloud at Kurono, knocking the beta to the ground. He added to the cloud, crafting it into a storm cloud full of water and electricity. He hadn't known until Izuku suggested it that he could even do that to his clouds, but it made his name, Storm, that much more appropriate. Letting loose, he released the cloud, watching as it shot thunderbolts and lightning into the man, electrocuting him. Oboro sneered at the charcoaled husk before turning to help his mate. Hizashi growled, swiping at Joke. She barely dodged to the side, avoiding his claws. How could you betray your pack like that? You stole my pups from their bed. Why? He screeched, not using his quirk in case he hit someone in his pack. He wasn't an enclosed space fighter, typically preferring the outdoor and long-ranged brawls. She hissed, it won't matter in a few minutes. You'll all be dead, and I will have one. She jerked again, rolling to avoid the dark cloud smacking the floor where she had just been. Hizashi grinned as his alpha mate joined his fight. I won't be the one dying here, Joke. You will. He leapt back as she pounced, but her claws never came. He frowned before realizing that she was being restrained by a white strip of tape. Hanta smirked as he covered the woman with as much of his tape as possible, leaving only her nose and eyes visible. Cloud Blank sent me to assist you in her capture. Oboro and Hizashi traded confused looks. Who's Cloud Blank? Oboro asked the pup. Hanta grinned, Izuku. He came up with all of our codenames. Hizashi giggled, of course he did. What's yours? Hanta laughed, Flex. He looked around the room, the droves of Yakuza down to its last few members before landing on Shota and Overhaul. We should probably help Eraserhead with Overhaul. Hizashi cursed, angry with himself for forgetting that his mate was fighting someone who could easily kill him. He relaxed when he saw Izuku and Shota working together against Overhaul, both erasure-quirked Omegas quickly wearing down the man. Oboro and Hizashi moved to join them but stopped as Shota growled, warning them to stay away. My alpha is saying help our mate, but my brain is saying that watching that mate wreck Overhaul's sheet is hot as F-. Oboro muttered to Hizashi. The blonde snorted, totally. And it's even better to watch our mate and our son destroy Overhaul together. I mean, they've never fought together before, but here they are, dancing around each other like they had been doing so for years. They vaguely noticed the other members of their pack finishing their own fights before joining the two alphas in watching their Omegan boss and his Omegan son systematically take down the man who had started a war. Finally, Overhaul collapsed, his breath laboring from the fight. Shota stood in front of him. You thought you would win this fight, but you obviously didn't plan on our pups being stronger than your fighters. With your death, the Shai Hasaikai will be no more, and my pack and I will take your territory from you. Is there anything you'd like to say before I kill you? Overhaul growled, how did a group of children defeat so many of my fighters? Shota grinned, my pup is a genius and you underestimated him. He let out his claws and stepped closer to the kneeling alpha. Goodbye, Overhaul. Have fun in hell. The room watched with tightening pleasure as the last Yakuza's head was detached from his body. Shota turned to his mates and pack. Where's Joke? Hanta came forward, dragging a still wrapped-up Joke behind him. Here you go. One pack traitor for your anger, he grinned. Izuku and Hitoshi laughed, destroy her dad. Izuku said, shocking Shota, Hizashi and Oboro. That's the first time you've called me dad, Izu. The greenette nodded, yep, Toshi and I thought it was about time. The three men pulled their sons into a tight hug. If Sho is dad, what are we? Hizashi questioned, his eyebrows wiggling. Izuku giggled, Oboro is pops and Hizashi, you are papa. Shota had to use his quirk to stop a quirk-powered screech from Hizashi. He called me papa? I'm papa. Hizashi bellowed. The room laughed at the blonde's antics before facing the still taped-up joke. What do we do with her now? Hitoshi asked. Shota sighed, I'm going to ask her a few questions then she will die. He tore the tape off her mouth, not caring to be gentle. Hello Fukakato. Seems you have some explaining to do, so tell us, why did you betray us and take Izuku and Hitoshi? Joke snarled, I took them because I wanted to break you three up. She shifted around in her bonds. I wanted you for my own, and if they were around, I'd never have you. Shota hissed, you wouldn't have had me even if I had been abandoned by them. Oboro and Hizashi paced closer. And we wouldn't have given him up for anything. Hizashi stated, pulling Shota into his arms. Izuku and Hitoshi stepped forward. Why, if you wanted to break apart our parents, did you keep us together with the same names? Joke rolled her eyes, in case I needed to find you both quickly. Izuku nodded, looking at his twin who nodded at his unspoken question. Dad, Papa, Pops. This one is ours. Izuku deadpanned. The three men nodded their agreements. They knew that their sons deserved justice for all that was done to them. Izuku gestured to Hanta. Flex, unwrap her please. Confused, Hanta did what he asked before stepping back. He wasn't upset that he didn't have his own chance to take out his anger on what Emi had done to him, happy that he had helped bring her to justice and was able to capture her himself. Grabbing each of her arms, Izuku and Hitoshi nodded to each other before yanking, tearing her arms off of the rest of her body, causing her to scream in pain. That was for kidnapping us. Izuku stated. Hitoshi grabbed Joke's hair, ripping out clumps of it. That was for the attack on Mei. Hitoshi said. Izuku punched her in the ribs, audible cracks sounding through the room. That was for hiring a RPST to kill Momo. Izuku growled. Hitoshi snarled, a roundhouse kick broke more ribs, that was for hurting Hanta. Izuku watched as Joke coughed blood, that kick must have pierced a lung. He threw his head back, relieved to finally bring an end to the danger that had plagued his pack. Hitoshi gave her another hit, leaving her with a broken nose. That was for giving the Shy Hasaikai the locations of our safe houses and sending a group to attack and kill us. Izuku stood in front of the crying Alpha. And this is for trying to kill our dads. With a final twist, Joke was dead, her neck broken. The room was silent for a minute as the viciousness of the twins was swallowed. DMN, remind me never to anger the two of them. Tuya muttered loudly, earning a swat to the gut from Kigo. The tension was broken, leaving the room to laugh. Hey kiddos? Let's go home. Shota offered, relief that his pack was finally safe. Shota had trouble avoiding the little white stick. It had been a few days since the war with the Shy Hasaikai and finally, he had some time to figure out what was going on with his body. He had been dealing with seemingly constant vomiting, sensitivity to smells, and irritability for the last week, and if he added that to the overprotectiveness from Izuku and Hitoshi and his increasing need to nest, Shota couldn't think of anything else it could be. His timer went off, signaling that it was time to check the test. He picked it up off the counter, staring at the tiny window displaying the results. He felt faint as he read the answer. PRGNNT. He was PRGNNT with another pup. He shook, nearly dropping the test to the floor. He needed his mates. Putting the test in his pocket, he left the bathroom to find them. After searching the compound and not finding them, Shota went back to their bedroom only to find them laying on the bed. Hey Sho, we were wondering where you went. Hizashi smiled. Shota could feel his heartbeat go faster. I just left here not too long ago looking for the both of you. Oboro frowned, you were looking for us? You okay? He got up, pulling Shota onto the bed. Tell us what's wrong, kitten. Hizashi urged. Shota shook his head, his hand digging into his pocket. Nothing's wrong. I just have some news and I'm not sure how you guys will take it. The two alphas looked at each other over his head. Neither one of them knew what he was worried about, but they loved their Omega and knew they would do anything to make him happy. Just tell us. We are going to love you and be there for you no matter what it is. Promise. Oboro begged. Shota took a deep breath and pulled out the test. I'm PRGNNT. There was a brief moment of stunned silence before the two alphas yelled in excitement. Oh my Kami. Sho, that's great. I'm gonna be a daddy again. Oboro continued yelling, pulling Shota into a hug. Hizashi joined them, now silent. Did the kitten get your tongue, Zashi? Oboro teased. The two had never seen their more excitable mate so silent, usually having to cut his quirk when he was loud. Shota frowned, are you mad, Zashi? Hizashi shook his head, I'm so f***ing happy. I have really no words for what I am feeling right now, but trust me when I say that I am definitely not mad. Even with his words, his nose wrinkled. But knowing that now, knowing that you're PRGNNT, tells me that we went into that battle with Overhaul with you being PRGNNT. We almost failed, almost lost you and the twins, almost lost our new pup. And that thought scares me. Shota's eyes fogged up with unshed tears. He had been so happy to be able to have another pup that he didn't even think about that fact. I'm sorry, Sunshine. I know that's scary, but we survived, the twins survived. He tugged Hizashi's head into his lap, running his fingers gently through the blonde strands. He looked up at Oboro, searching for his thoughts. Oboro nodded, silently letting Shota know that he felt the same way as Hizashi. But as usual, Oboro was the stronger of the three. Hey Hizashi, he's right. We didn't know that Sho was PRGNNT. We can't do anything now, we can only think about now and our future. Hizashi wiped his eyes as he sat back up. Leaning over, he gently kissed his mates. That's fair. Hindsight is always 20/20. Hizashi turned to smile at Shota. Thanks kitten, I feel much better. Shota smiled, curling back up with his alphas. I'm glad. Oboro snorted, we should tell the boys they are going to be big brothers. The other two nodded in agreement. I'll call Izuku. Shota stated, grabbing his phone. A few minutes later there was a knock on the door. Come in. Oboro called. Izuku and Hitoshi entered the room, slight grins on their faces. Hey, Dad called us. Said he had some news to share? Oboro nodded, waving them closer. Sit down and we will share. He said, pointing to the foot of the bed. They crawled up, quickly getting comfortable. Your dads and I have something to tell you. Hizashi began. Shota squeezed his mate's hands, he couldn't keep his straight face anymore. You both are going to be big brothers, he blurted out, a wide grin on his face. Izuku and Hitoshi gasped, their faces breaking out in joy. That's amazing, Dad. Izuku screamed, jumping towards his parents. Hitoshi joined them, I'm so happy for you guys. I can't wait to hold them and teach them everything we know. Oboro laughed, they won't be able to learn what you know for a while, Toshi. Izuku snorted, semantics. He curled up with his brother in their laps, his head near his dad's belly. Have you told anyone else yet? He asked. Shota shook his head. No, we wanted to tell our sons first. We can tell the rest of the pack at dinner. He opened his arms. Until then, how about we cuddle as a family for a bit? They ended up falling asleep. 9 months later. Izuku ran into the building, his twin close behind. Their dad was finally in labor, Chiyo having made Shota's two alphas leave the room and call their sons. Not that either of them was happy about not being with Shota. Izuku could hear his dad's pain screams through the thick door as he made it to his papa and pop's sides. How long has it been? He wheezed. Neither one of them looked away from the door separating them from their mate. It's only been a few minutes. We knew she was going to kick us out, she almost did it when you two were born, but it had been a difficult and early birthing at that time. Oboro stated. Hizashi whimpered, he sounds so bad. I keep getting the urge to waltz in there and take away his pain. Izuku sighed, he'll be okay, Papa. Like you guys said, he's done this before. At least it's only one pup this time and not two. Less pain that way. Hitoshi snorted, have you guys called Auntie Nem or Uncle Tensei? Hizashi nodded, yeah, Tensei is trying to get out of his meeting early, but Shosher answered Nem's phone. She's got bad morning sickness today. It had been announced 2 months after Shota's own announcement that Nemuri and Shosher were expecting another pup. Izuku nodded, wincing at another scream of pain coming through the door. He and Hitoshi ended up pulling the two alphas down into the chairs against the wall, forcing them to wait it out. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened and out walked Chiyo. He's ready for you guys. Be gentle with him, this one was rough and he's tired. She ordered before leaving the room through a different door. The four of them raced into Shota's room, stopping short at the sight of the small bundle wrapped in his arms. Everyone, meet the newest addition to our family. He smiled weakly. They came forward, looking closer at the small pink blob. What did you decide to name her, Dad? Hitoshi asked. Shota looked down at his newborn daughter. Her name is Eri.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.